Chapter 31:51. Enchanting's spirit didn't notice Lin Sun's abnormality. He was still immersed in his memories. The ruins of Wonderful Tao is known as the most mysterious place among the 4 great ruins of Tao. It is also regarded as the only place of transcendence. In the past eras, as long as the existence of Boundless Realm reached the ruins of Wonderful Tao, they could compete for the ultimate road of transcendence. That year, I also had the opportunity to go to the ruins of Wonderful Tao. But when I really arrived, I found that the ruins of Wonderful Tao was already full of danger. Shan Ying's expression flickered. On the first day I arrived, I encountered an incomparably dangerous assassination and almost lost my life. I'll never forget that the old thing who wanted to kill me called himself Tianju. Speaking of this, his eyes were filled with hatred. Then, he sighed, it was also at that time that the Lord saved me. He told me that as long as I followed him, I would no longer be threatened by the great silence, lifeless tribulation. The mastermind is also in the ruins of Wonderful Tao? Lin Sun was shocked and almost asked aloud. But he held back in the end. The more it was like this, the more Shan would not answer. But Lin Sun did not gain nothing. Shan's words finally confirmed a problem. The mastermind was a living creature, not formed by the power of rules. At that time I didn't agree. Shan said, although the Lord saved me, how could I be willing to be under someone else when I had already reached the ruins of Wonderful Tao? How could I care about the threat of the great silence, lifeless tribulation? But later I knew that the ruins of Wonderful Tao was far more dangerous than I imagined. Suddenly, he paused and changed the topic. Do you want to know what the ruins of Wonderful Tao is like? Lin Sun said without hesitation, of course. What a pity. Shan sighed. Everything I know about that place is just the tip of the iceberg. In less than 3 months, I encountered 3 fatal crises. The first time was when I was injured by a heaven's end, the second time was when I was trapped in a secret realm, and the third time was when I was injured by a sword chi that suddenly appeared. Sword chi? Lin Sun was surprised. Exactly, a strand of innate sword chi that's truly born from the laws of chaos. A divine object like this is extremely rare in the ruins of Tao, and it's also viewed as the Tao fruit of chaos by us Boundless Realm figures. Every single chaotic Tao fruit is a type of supreme fortune, and refining it will allow one to grasp a complete strand of the laws of chaos. Shan said, the Boundless Realm is the final stage of the eternal Tao path. Whoever grasps more chaos laws will be able to possess greater strength in the Boundless Realm, and also have greater hopes of realizing a true sense of transcendence in this ultimate realm. Lin Sun's eyes flickered, and his mood fluctuated. This was the first time he had heard of such things. Sadly, with my strength back then, I couldn't suppress that strand of sword chi at all. Instead, I was almost killed by it. Shan let out a long sigh. After a moment of silence, he said, in a short period of 3 months, I encountered 3 fatal calamities in the ruins of myriad ingenious Tao, and it was Lord who saved me from death 3 times. It was also at that time that I knew that Lord had been watching me since I entered the ruins of myriad ingenious Tao. He took a deep breath. At that time I asked Lord why he saved me. Lord said that he was now trapped in the ruins of myriad ingenious Tao and couldn't leave, and he needed someone he could trust to help him with something he wanted to do. Lin Sun's eyes narrowed. The backstage manipulator was trapped in the ruins of myriad ingenious Tao? This was another thing that Lin Sun didn't expect at all. For a moment there were waves in his heart. From then on, I gave my life to Lord. A gentleman will die for his bosom friend, not to mention that Lord has saved me 3 times. Shan's expression was complicated. There was gratitude, sadness and loss, and he didn't speak for a long time. Lin Sun couldn't help asking, what happened later? Later, Shan had just uttered these 2 words when his expression changed abruptly. It was as if he had been struck by lightning. Then, he revealed a bitter smile. "I have long guessed that this would happen. Master, my life is returned to you." While his voice was still echoing, his primordial spirit turned into light rain and disappeared. This sudden scene shocked Lin Sun. He was caught off guard and had no time to save Shan Ying. Shan Ying's primordial spirit disappeared. Damn it! Lin Sun's face was gloomy. Shan Ying knew many secrets that Lin Sun didn't know, and he was most likely to learn something about the backstage manipulator from him. But now, his primordial spirit suddenly collapsed and disappeared. Undoubtedly, as Shan Ying said at the beginning, there was a mark left by the backstage manipulator in his primordial spirit, and it was this mark that destroyed Shan Ying's primordial spirit. It could also be inferred that the backstage manipulator had known that the Great Silence fatal disaster failed to kill him this time. After the primordial bell returned, the backstage manipulator must have noticed something unusual, so he didn't hesitate to kill Shan Ying, the messenger of destiny. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold as he guessed the reason. The primordial spirit of a boundless realm existence from the Tao era, a powerhouse who had once shocked an era and fought for a chance in the Kunlun Ruins Sea of Destiny to arrive at the ruins of Wonder of Tao, had actually been killed just like that. Besides causing Lin Sun to be shocked, he couldn't help but feel horrified. He could tell that Shan Ying had sincerely given his life to the backstage manipulator, but the one who killed him in the end was also the backstage manipulator. It had to be said that this was very sad. After a while, Lin Sun calmed down completely after stabilizing his mind. Chatting with Shan Ying allowed him to learn quite a few valuable things. Firstly, the chance of survival that he fought for in the Kunlun Ruins was indeed in the Kunlun Ruins source energy, the Sea of Destiny. All those years ago, Shan Ying had grasped a chance in the Sea of Destiny and finally realized his goal of heading to the Ruins of Wonder. Secondly, the Ruins of Wonder of Tao was filled with danger. Even a boundless realm existence like Shan Ying would encounter all sorts of fatal threat. But similarly, there were eras that could allow boundless realm existences to achieve breakthroughs in the Ruins of Wonder of Tao. For example, the chaotic Tao fruit. The so-called chaotic Tao fruit was the complete energy of laws that was born from within the chaos. To boundless realm existences, the more chaotic Tao fruits they refined, the more hope they had to achieve ultimate transcendence from the boundless realm. Thirdly, the backstage manipulator was an extremely formidable existence, but he was currently trapped in the Ruins of Wonder of Tao and was unable to escape, so he had no choice but to borrow the strength of others to do things for him. For example, Shan Ying was one of the emissaries of destiny that worked for him. After understanding all of this, Lin Sun finally understood why so many eras had passed, yet no one knew exactly who the backstage manipulator was. This person had probably been trapped in the Ruins of Wonder of Tao a very long time ago. Chun Linkong had once said that Golden Cicada had once told him that there were many clues that proved that the backstage manipulator was very likely in the Ruins of Wonder of Tao. Chun Linkong had once told Lin Sun these words when he headed to the Ruins of Wonder of Tao. Now it would seem that Golden Cicada's inference was undoubtedly correct. Master had already set off for the Ruins of Wonder of Tao a very long time ago. Even the ancestors of the 4 great ancestral courts and some boundless realm existences from various eras had already gone there a long time ago. Lin Sun recalled many things of the past. But whether it's Master or the others, there hasn't been any news related to the backstage manipulator until now. Could it be that all the experts that had arrived at the Ruins of Wonder of Tao in the past were trapped within, or had already met with misfortune? The more Lin Sun thought about it, the more he felt that the Ruins of Wonder of Tao was too mysterious. Even the backstage manipulator was trapped within. This simply overturned Lin Sun's previous understanding. After a long time, Lin Sun finally discarded all distracting thoughts and focused on recovering from his injuries. 2 days later, Lin Sun walked out of the hall. Wu Yang and the others had been waiting there for a long time, and they couldn't help but step forward to ask when they saw Lin Sun. They were all delighted to know that Lin Sun's injuries had completely healed. "Little friend, did you manage to find out anything from the soul of the emissary of destiny?" asked Xingjia. Lin Sun immediately told them about Shan Ying's origins and everything he knew. For a time, the hearts of Wu Yang and the others were in turmoil. From the looks of it, even the ruins of Wonder of Tao isn't an absolutely safe place. Someone let out a long sigh. In everyone's knowledge, the ruins of Wonder of Tao was the only place that could truly be unafraid of the threat of the great silence lifeless tribulation. It was also the place that any eternal realm cultivator dreamed of seeking the Tao. However, after understanding what Shanning had said, these old monsters could not help but feel heavy in their hearts. What's the point of worrying about this? Even if an era is destroyed, as long as we stay in the ruins of creation, we can survive and wait for the arrival of the next era, said Wu Yang. Moreover, people like us who have exceeded the realm of rules probably won't even have the chance to fight for a chance to cross after entering the Kunlun ruins, let alone head to the ruins of Wonder of Tao. Shan Ying was a boundless realm cultivator, but he had experienced many intense competitions in the Kunlun ruins back then. Only then did he manage to carve out a bloody path and fight for a chance to head to the ruins of Wonder of Tao. Compared to him, it was simply a pipe dream for someone who had exceeded the realm of rules to seek such an opportunity. Senior Wu Yang is right. As long as we stay in the ruins of creation, we won't have to worry about the danger of an era being destroyed, said Lin Sun. He had already grasped the rules of creation and completely understood the meaning of the existence of the order of creation. It could be said that this was the nest of each era. Even if an era was destroyed, as long as they stayed in the ruins of creation, they would not have to worry about suffering. It seems like that's the only way. The old monsters nodded in agreement. What do you plan to do next? Wu Yang looked at Lin Sun. Lin Sun said without hesitation, I want to make a trip back to the eternal world now. This trip to the ruins of creation had allowed him to learn many things. He planned to bring the entire Yuan sect with him after he returned and move them to the divine city of creation. Only there could he feel completely at ease. Otherwise, the existence of the mastermind and the great silence lifeless tribulation would ultimately be a threat that would cause him to be unable to eat or sleep in peace. Chapter 31:52 Eternal True World, Yuan Sect. Mother, I'm back. Zhao Jingxian, who was sleeping, was awakened by a familiar voice and slowly opened her eyes. Then, she saw Lin Fan standing in front of the bed. Zhao Jingxian sat up and said excitedly, Fanner. She still could not believe it and thought that she was dreaming. Lin Fan stepped forward and hugged her tightly. He smiled and said, Mother, I've made you worry these days. It was Father who saved me and senior brother Su Bai. We're all fine now. Zhao Jingxuan's nose turned sour, and she cried tears of joy. It's good that you're back. It's good that you're back. I didn't know how to live when you weren't around. Lin Fan's heart was in turmoil. He was touched and guilty. Mother, don't worry. I won't let you worry anymore. Where's your father? Zhao Jingxian asked. Father went to find Senior Xian Failing and the others. Lin Fan helped Zhao Jingxian up from the bed, made a cup of hot tea, and handed it to her. Mother, you don't know how powerful Father is now. He alone killed so many people in the ruins of fate that no one dares to call themselves supreme. Zhao Jingxian interrupted him angrily. I don't want to hear this. I just want you and your father to be safe. I don't need to worry about you. Lin Fan immediately felt embarrassed. Go to the ruins of fate? In the central hall, when they learned that Lin Sun planned to bring the entire Yuan sect to the ruins of fate, Xian Failing, Fang Daoping, and the other elders were stunned. That's right. Only when we get there will the Yuan sect not have to worry about being attacked by the mastermind behind the scenes, nor will we have to worry about the danger of the destruction of the era. Lin Sun said, Moreover, after you reach the ruins of fate, you will also have a chance to prove your Tao to be eternal. Otherwise, you won't have another chance in the eternal true world. Xian Feiling and the others looked at each other and hesitated. The Yuan sect had stood tall for countless years. Who would be willing to let them leave just like that? However, they also knew that Lin Sun's arrangement was undoubtedly the safest way. Let us think about this matter carefully, Xian Feiling said. Lin Sun nodded. There's no hurry. I still have to go to the 9th heaven. Seniors, just give me an answer in half a month. You're still going to the 9th heaven? Xian Feiling and the others were stunned. Lin Sun smiled and said, When I went to the 9th heaven, I let the Yi clan, Xingtian clan, and Panwu clan escape. How can I let them go so easily? Everyone couldn't help but reveal strange expressions. In the past, it was the eternal gods of the 9th heaven who bullied Lin Sun. Now, it was Lin Sun's turn to bully the eternal gods. Besides that, I still have to make a trip to the Origin sect and the Zen sect to strive to put an end to the enmity of the past. After that, I won't have any regrets when I head to the ruins of creation. Lin Sun said softly. Xian Feiling and others were all shocked that Lin Sun was going to settle accounts with Witch cult and Zen cult. Xian Feiling said in a low voice, Let's not talk about anything else. I think it's necessary to communicate with the Spirit Church about going to the ruins of creation. If it's feasible, I hope the Spirit Church will leave with us. Of course. Lin Sun nodded. He already had such a plan. All right, we'll talk to the Spirit Church about this. Xian Feiling made a decision. On the same day, Lin Sun's greenwood Taoist body went to the 9th heaven alone. His scarlet fire Taoist body and platinum Taoist body went to the witch cult together. His original body and yellow Taoist body set off for the Zen sect. As for the black water Taoist body, Lin Sun still left it behind to guard the Yuan sect. The Zen world. The place where the Zen ancestral court was located was also known as the Radiant Buddhist Land. The entrance to the Zen world was located in a divine mountain bathed in billions of rays of auspicious light. However, since ancient times, very few people in the world knew about this place. As a result, the impression that the Zen sect gave the world was extremely mysterious. On this day, there was a fluctuation in the void, and Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. His eyes looked at the divine mountain in the distance. With his divine sense, he could see at a glance that the divine mountain was covered with countless mysterious and unfathomable restrictive power, and the power of the divine level order was surging within. Ordinary eternal figures in the law-transcending realm would not be able to sneak in. Lin Sun couldn't help but think of some things in the past. Back then, eldest senior brother and the others were trapped in the Taiyu real realm, and a group of big shots of the Zen sect blocked the surroundings of the Taiyu real realm. At that time, Shi Yi, one of the 9 great Buddha primogenitors of Dhyana sect, led a group of masters to hunt down Pu Zhen and Xue. Fortunately, when they fled to the Cloud Guard house, they met Lin Sun, who helped them resolve the trouble. Back then, on his way back from the 10 Devil territories, he was blocked by the Dharma form of the Zen sect's present Buddha, Jianan. Fortunately, he was helped by the Dharma form of martial uncle Kong Ju. Back then, all kinds of grievances of the past surged into Lin Sun's mind like a tide. And now, he was here to end these grievances. Whoosh! Lin Sun waved his sleeve, and layers of the divine level order spread out, covering the world. Then, he spoke in a voice, Lin Sun, the successor of Fang Xiyuan, has come today to end the grievances of the past. Where are the people of the Zen sect? The voice was like a great bell, rumbling through the world. The sound waves spread, causing the clouds to collapse and all things to rustle. The hundreds of millions of auspicious lights covering the mountains in the distance exploded and collapsed like a tide. Immediately afterward, countless restrictions fluctuated, the Buddhist light was steaming, and there was a burst of noisy sounds. Obviously, the powerhouses in the Zen sect were alarmed. Soon, many figures appeared out of thin air, each of them surrounded by Buddhist light, solemn and powerful aura. Lin Sun, you really came. The leader was an old monk with white eyebrows and a white beard. His expression was solemn. At this moment, these powerhouses of the Zen sect also saw Lin Sun's figure. Although he stood there alone, his tall figure was like a supreme ruler, making people feel pressure. For a moment, their expressions became extremely solemn. They had already known what happened in the ninth heaven some time ago. How could they not know that Lin Sun had already become extremely powerful? However, no one expected that Lin Sun would come to them today. The hatred of the past has not been settled. How can I not come? Lin Sun put his hands behind his back, his expression calm, without joy or sorrow. I'll give you a chance. Bow your head and admit your guilt now, and I can give you a quick death. Otherwise, don't blame me for flattening this place. His voice resounded clearly through the universe, and it caused the experts of the Zen sect to feel sorrow and rage in their hearts. As one of the four ancestral halls, they had never been threatened like this for countless years. Lin Sun, aren't you afraid of the wrath of heaven for being so fierce and rampant? An old monk shouted angrily. Puff! Lin Sun pointed in the air, and the old monk's body instantly exploded, turning into ashes and dissipating. Both his body and soul were destroyed. This scene shocked the other bigwigs of the Zen sect, and their bodies stiffened. It should be known that the place where they stood was covered with countless restrictions, as well as the fluctuations of their Zen sect's divine order. However, in front of Lin Sun's killing intent, it was as if it didn't exist. It didn't stop him at all. In the past years, your Zen sect has used countless despicable means to deal with my mountain of Cun. How dare you say that I'm rampant and fierce? How ridiculous! Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and his expression was full of mockery. Are you only allowed to harm others, but not allowed to fight back? Shameless! His voice shook the sky. Lin Sun, can you give our Zen sect a chance to make up for our past mistakes? The white-browed old monk put his palms together, and his expression was full of pity and bitterness. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. How? As long as our Zen sect has a chance to continue to exist, we will give our lives to you without any complaints, the white-browed old monk said in a deep voice. The others couldn't help but be in an uproar, and their expressions changed. This was equivalent to bowing and admitting defeat to Lin Sun, and it filled their hearts with sorrow and depression. However, Lin Sun said without hesitation, "Impossible! From today onwards, the Zen sect will never exist in the world. I advise you to give up as soon as possible." Lin Sun, you've gone too far. A bronze-skinned middle-aged monk with a strong aura said angrily, "Do you really think that we can only be slaughtered like the eternal god clan in the ninth heaven?" Puff! An invisible sword chi swept over and killed the middle-aged monk on the spot. His blood splashed in the void. Lin Sun said indifferently, "I'm sorry. Now you are indeed no different from fish on the chopping board." The bloody scene made the others' faces turn blue, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. "We have already admitted our guilt. We only hope that our sect can survive. Taoism Lin, are you really not going to give us a chance?" The white-browed monk looked at Lin Sun. Yes, Lin Sun nodded with a calm expression, but there was no doubt about it. The white-browed monk let out a long sigh and said no more. The next moment, from the holy mountain under their feet, countless restrictive forces gushed out, all releasing blazing and mighty Sanskrit Buddha light, and attacked Lin Sun. That kind of power was enough to make people who exceeded the rules tremble. But Lin Sun didn't even look at it and waved his sleeve. Boom! The mighty Sanskrit Buddha light vanished into thin air, turning into nothingness. Immediately after, Lin Sun took a step forward. The world turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. The countless restrictive forces around the holy mountain exploded with a rumbling sound, turning into a rain of light that filled the sky. This is the power of transcendence! All of a sudden, the white-browed old monk's face turned deathly pale. He finally understood why Lin Sun dared to attack so fearlessly. It was just that when he reacted, it was already a step too late. He saw, as Lin Sun took a step in the air, the world turned upside down and everything collapsed. The holy mountain that had been in the world for countless years collapsed and turned into ruins, setting off a sky full of smoke and dust. As for the white-browed old monk and the other big shots, they had long been imprisoned by the terrifying power released by Lin Sun. All of them were unable to move, and their faces were covered with fear and despair. Don't worry, Lin Sun is not someone who kills indiscriminately. Although the Zen Church has been removed from the world, everyone in the sect will end up the same as the eternal gods in the ninth heaven. Some can live and some must die. With an indifferent voice, Lin Sun had already arrived at the entrance to the Zen world. He waved his right hand. Boom! The divine-level power that covered the entrance to the Zen world also exploded like paper. In the next moment, Lin Sun's figure stepped in. Thank you, Brother Awadara, for the reward from the leader again. I will continue to add updates tonight, and there will be a special update at the end of the month to thank the leader. Chapter 3153. In the Zen world, in a cave dwelling, a 9-colored lotus swayed and sprinkled colorful light. Fanon, who was thin and hunched, sat cross-legged on a futon. His face was thin, and he had a snow-white beard. There was an absolute beginning stone statue in front of him. That heretic is here. Are you really going to abandon the Zen sect? Fan An's expression was uncertain as he stared at the absolute beginning stone statue. This treasure that was left behind by the Zen sect's patriarch, sure, hadn't had the slightest reaction since the last time it transmitted a thought fluctuation. It was the same now. Outside the cave dwelling, there were noises. There were angry shouts, unwilling roars, and panicked screams. There were also the rumbles of fighting, the sounds of rocks collapsing, and the loud noises of palaces being destroyed. All of this caused the gloominess in the space between Fan An's brows to grow denser, and a wisp of indescribable sorrow and bitterness surged into his heart. After a while, Fan An suddenly grabbed the absolute beginning stone statue with both hands. His eyes shone with a frightening divine light. You harmed the Zen sect. You! His deep roar was like that of a desperate beast. His thin and tranquil face became livid and sinister, and his eyes were filled with rage and hatred. Bang! The absolute beginning stone statue exploded into powder that fell from Fan An's fingers. Fan An panted for a while. He suddenly turned his head and saw a tall figure standing at the entrance of the cave dwelling. Lin Sun. Fan An's pupils shrank. He slowly stood up from the futon and said in a hoarse voice, "I'm the only one left?" Lin Sun shook his head. "I'm not a person who kills indiscriminately. Some innocent people don't need to die because of the mistakes of the Zen sect." Fan An was stunned. His eyes were complicated. "Heh, so I have to thank you on behalf of those descendants who survived?" Lin Sun pointed at his heart. "I have a clear conscience. I'm not pretending to be merciful." "Fake mercy." His words were obviously sarcastic. It was a mockery of the Zen sect. But Fan An was not in the mood to care about this. He looked at Lin Sun and said after a while, "I don't understand. Aren't you afraid of the mastermind behind the calamity of the era?" Lin Sun couldn't help but laugh. "What's the use of being afraid? Will the mastermind let me live because of fear?" Fan An narrowed his eyes and nodded. "Right. You have no way out. So you are not afraid. Sometimes, when you have too many ways out, you will make some stupid decisions." He remembered the absolute beginning stone statue left by the patriarch. It was a treasure that guarded the Zen sect, but it was also the treasure of the absolute beginning. It was the treasure of the absolute sect. "Before I make my move, there's something I don't understand." Lin Sun asked, "Why does your Zen church hate Mountain Heart so much? Not only the Zen sect, but also the witch sect." So far, Lin Sun had not figured out the reason. God Fan said. Fanon said without hesitation. Among the 4 great ancestral courts, the patriarchs of my sect and the patriarchs of the voodoo cult were mortal enemies with your master, the master of the heart core, before they established their sections. In the 4 ancestral courts, the patriarch of the Zen sect and the patriarch of the witch sect were enemies with your master, the master of heart, before they established their orthodoxy. Lin Sun couldn't help but sigh. God. This kind of hatred was the most difficult to solve. You see me as a demon, and I see you as a heretic. Just like water and fire, there must be a winner in order to resolve it. What a pity! At this moment, Fanon let out a long sigh. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows. What's a pity? Fanon said with a strange expression. I don't know if you can survive the end of the era. It's a pity. Lin Sun smiled. He didn't say anything else and started to fight. After a while, when Lin Sun walked out of the Zen realm, the divine order of the ancestral court of the Zen sect had been taken away. The mountain gate had collapsed, and the foundation built over countless years had been destroyed. From then on, there would be no Zen sect in this world. The ancestral court of the witch sect. In front of the mountain gate, Lin Sun's scarlet flame Taoist body stood with his hands behind his back. He looked at the familiar place with emotion. Back then, he and Yuan Changtian represented the Yuan sect, and came to the witch sect to participate in the operation of the 10 Devils' Land. That was the first time he entered the witch sect. Now, when he started all over again, he was in existence at the creation realm that had stepped foot onto the eternal path towards the Tao. It's really this guy. Humph, does he think that our witch sect is as weak as the eternal gods in the 9th heaven? In front of the mountain gate in the distance, many strong figures of the witch sect appeared. Each of them had a fierce and savage aura, full of murderous intent. The witch sect was very special. They didn't respect heaven and earth, didn't respect etiquette, and were not afraid of death. They were proud to die in battle. Therefore, even when they saw Lin Sun at this moment, they didn't show any fear. However, not being afraid of death didn't mean that they were reckless. They had also learned about what happened in the 9th heaven, so they naturally knew how terrifying Lin Sun was. It seems that you already know why I'm here. Then it's easy. I'll give you a chance. Do you choose to die in battle, or surrender immediately and let me punish you for your crimes? Lin Sun's scarlet flame Taoist body said indifferently. As he spoke, he waved his sleeve. Whooshed, a divine level order soared into the sky and covered the entire sky. You want us to surrender? Wishful thinking. An old man in a beast robe of the witch sect shouted, and his voice was like thunder, resounding through the sky. Formation. Boom. More than 100 important figures of the witchcraft cult flew out and formed a grand battle formation in the void. The moment the battle formation took shape, it actually affected the god-level order power that enveloped the entire witchcraft cult and erupted with boundlessly terrifying might. Kill. The old man in a beast robe took the lead to attack, and the whole battle formation was immediately activated, causing the world to shake and all directions to tremble. A mantis trying to stop a chariot. Lin Sun snorted coldly and stretched out his hand to sweep the void. Flames rose all over the sky, and the dazzling and blazing torrent of flames was like a wanton ocean, falling down to the 9th heaven and drowning the whole world. In an instant, the bodies of the old man in a beast robe and hundreds of big shots of the witch sect all turned into ashes. They were easily erased from the world like paper paste. That scene made all the strong men of the witch sect near the mountain gate in the distance horrified, and their faces changed. If you're not afraid of death, you can kill me now, Lin Sun said indifferently, and his eyes were full of coldness. Compared with the Zen sect, he hated the witch sect more. This orthodoxy was unscrupulous and unscrupulous. In the past years, it had sent forces to deal with him more than once, and they had formed a deep hatred. Since the moment our witch sect was established, we have never been afraid," a tall man in a gray robe shouted. His figure shook and turned into a height of thousands of meters, and his whole body was covered with terrible eternal light. It was in existence in the realm of transgressing the rules. "Really?" Lin Sun patted in the air. Bang! The tall man was directly slapped to kneel on the ground, and the ground collapsed and a big pit was formed. His skin was cracked and blood was flowing. The strong men of the witch sect felt like they were struck by lightning, as if the sky had collapsed. They were not afraid of death or fighting, but in the face of Lin Sun, who could easily suppress the strong in the realm of transgressing the rules, they could not help but feel desperate. He was too strong. Fighting against him was no different from an ant trying to shake a tree. If it was in the past, they would not be afraid with the existence of the boundless realm in the witch sect. But now, things had changed, and it was too late to say anything. "Lin Sun, do you think you can make the witch sect lower its head like this? Don't even think about it," the man in a gray robe roared. "It doesn't matter if you don't lower your head. I'll just erase your orthodoxy from the world," Lin Sun said casually. "Ridiculous, the sages of the witch sect have already gone to the ruins of Tao. When they come back, you and the Yuan sect will all die," the man in a gray robe roared. Lin Sun's expression was as calm as before. "I'm afraid the sages of the witch sect will not be able to return in this lifetime. But don't worry, sooner or later, I will go to the ruins of Tao to find them." Bang! He pointed in the air, and the man in a gray robe with the cultivation of transgressing the rules exploded, and his body and soul were destroyed. Then, Lin Sun walked towards the gate of the witch sect. Kill! Many fearless powerhouses rushed forward, but they all died in front of Lin Sun like moths flying into a flame. No one could stop him. In a flash, Lin Sun broke through the layers of restrictions, tore open the gate passage covered by the divine order, and killed his way into the witch world. He was unparalleled all the way. In less than 10 minutes, the witch sect's ancestral court, one of the 4 great ancestral courts, was flattened by Lin Sun. Just like before, Lin Sun did not kill them all. This was the principle he abided by. He only killed the leader and did not implicate the innocent. On that day, the witch sect's ancestral court was also removed from the world. The primordial realm. On the day Lin Sun's original body returned, the Scarlet Flame Taoist body and the Platinum Taoist body also returned, and they brought back the news of the witch sect's ancestral court being destroyed. Lin Sun was not surprised by this. With his current realm, it was difficult to find an opponent in the entire eternal true world. Destroying the witch sect, which had suffered great losses, was a piece of cake. 10 days later, the Greenwood Taoist body, who had gone to the 9th heaven region, returned. It turned out that when the Greenwood Taoist body arrived at the 9th heaven region, he found that the Yi clan, the Panwu clan, and the Xingtian clan, the 3 great eternal gods, had not shown up. He had no idea where they were hiding. The Greenwood Taoist body went through all kinds of investigations and used all kinds of forbidden secret techniques, but he still could not find the hiding place of the 3 great eternal gods. In the end, he could only return empty-handed. Lin Sun was not very disappointed about this. Even if the 3 eternal gods managed to survive the destruction of their era, they and the civilization of this era would still appear in the ruins of creation. When that time came, Lin Sun had a way to deal with them. "What do you think, seniors?" Lin Sun asked in the central hall. Previously, Xian Feiling and Fang Daoping had already learned the news of the destruction of Yuan sect and Zen sect. They were shocked and sighed with emotion. At this moment, when they heard Lin Sun's question, they looked at each other and nodded. "We have made our decision and decided to do as you said." Xian Feiling smiled. The current Yuan sect was not just made up of the descendants of the Yuan sect. There were also members of the Lin family, the Luo family, the Xian family, the Yuan family, the Dugu family, and other clans. No matter how reluctant they were, they had to consider the overall situation and everyone's future. That's good. Lin Sun immediately relaxed and smiled. When we reach the ruins of fate, we will be completely safe. More updates for you. Chapter 3154. If we leave, what will happen to all living beings in the world? Duguyong suddenly asked. Lin Sun was stunned and fell silent. The other old monsters also had different expressions, and their emotions were complicated. There were hundreds of millions of living beings in the 9 heavens of the eternal world. Once an era was destroyed in the future, these living beings would definitely suffer. Beyond the eternal world, there was also the boundless world, which would also suffer from the destruction of an era. It could be said that this was a disaster that all the living beings in an era had to face. We can't even take care of ourselves, so how can we take care of others? Duguyong said in a low voice, "It is indeed our duty to help all the living beings in the world, but we have to wait until we have the ability to do so." Fong Daoping sighed softly. "Alas, that's true, but when I think of how innocent all the living beings in the world are going to lose their lives because of an era's disaster, I still feel very uncomfortable. There are still more than 800 years before the arrival of the era's disaster. If possible, I will try my best to prevent the destruction of an era from happening," Lin Sun suddenly said. All of a sudden, the atmosphere in the hall became silent. If someone else said this, they would probably be regarded as a madman. After all, no one knew how many eras had been destroyed in the great disaster in the past. If this disaster could be stopped, why hadn't anyone stopped it until now? And it should be known that in the past eras, there were countless giants of the boundless realm who could walk through many eras. Didn't they try to stop all this from happening? Obviously, all those existences that tried to stop all of this had failed without exception. And now, Lin Sun made the same decision. How could the old monsters not be shocked by this? However, he still did it even though he knew it was impossible. His sense of responsibility and state of mind were enough to move people and make them admire him. Let's talk about the future in the future. It will be better if we can do it, but if we can't, there's no need to force ourselves. After all, the most powerful beings in the previous eras couldn't stop all this. Xian Feiling seemed to be encouraging Lin Sun, but in fact, he didn't have much confidence in Lin Sun's decision. The other old monsters were the same. Lin Sun smiled and said no more. Of course, he didn't have to stop the occurrence of the era's disaster, but if there was a chance to stop it in the future, why not? On the same day, Xian Feiling and the other elders got to work. They gathered everyone in the primordial realm and announced their decision to head to the ruins of creation. No one objected. Everyone knew that such a decision was the best choice for them. Who could possibly object? In less than a day, the entire Yuan sect was ready. 2 days later, Green Cloud, Spirit Master of the Ancestral Court of the Spirit Church, came with a group of big shot. They had also decided to go to the ruins of fate with Lin Sun. That was why he had brought everyone from the spiritual church with him this time. Lin Sun was naturally very happy about this. It was also on that day that Lin Sun acted. He refined the entire primordial realm and brought everyone out of the eternal true world. No one knew that the Zen sect and the Witch sect had already been destroyed. No one knew that the Yuan Church and the Spirit Church had been taken away by Lin Sun to the ruins of fate. To the people in the world, the 4 great ancestral courts were too far away from them, and it was impossible for them to know that the 4 great ancestral courts had already disappeared from the eternal true world within an incredibly short period of time. The ruins of fortune. Lin Sun walked forward alone in the vast galaxy. At his level of cultivation, he could cross a galaxy with every step he took. If he had not been afraid of the backlash from the laws of the world and had no choice but to suppress his aura, his speed would have been even faster. When he arrived at the galaxy where the divine city of fortune was, Lin Sun's divine sense suddenly sensed that something was off. With the area where the divine city of fortune was as the center, there were many figures scattered in the void in all directions. These figures clearly came from different forces, and they were all in group. But that was not important. What was important was that these figures were all kneeling in the direction of the divine city of fortune with their heads lowered. At a glance, there were figures kneeling everywhere. There were men and women, old and young, and it was a spectacular scene. This surprised Lin Sun, but after thinking about it for a while, he vaguely understood. Shaking his head, Huang Xiaolong walked toward the fortune divine city. Huh! It's Senior Lin. Senior Lin has shown himself. In next to no time, someone noticed Lin Sun's figure, and it caused a mighty uproar to arise in the surroundings. All those figures that knelt there instinctively looked over. They felt as if Lin Sun was a monarch that had arrived here, and he was being worshipped by all. All of you are from the god clans of the various eras, yet you're kneeling here now. Aren't all of you afraid of bringing shame to your clans? Lin Sun stopped moving and spoke indifferently, and his voice swept through the starry sky. Those figures still knelt there, but their expressions changed indeterminately. Senior, we've come to atone for our crimes. Please be magnanimous and forgive the clans that stand behind us. So long as our clans are able to survive, we're willing to pay any price. A white-haired old man spoke with a trembling voice, and his face was covered in reverence and anxiousness. Please forgive us, Senior. Please forgive us, Senior. For a time, all the figures that knelt in this expanse of the starry sky started begging for mercy, and their voices reverberated through space for a long time. If such a scene were to be witnessed by everyone in the world, their jaws would definitely hit the ground from shock. These were all great figures of the various god clans. In the past, they were high and mighty, and they looked down upon an era. How noble and dazzling they were! But now, all of them were like prisoners, begging for mercy in terror. Sure enough, you've come for this. Lin Sun's eyes revealed a look of enlightenment. Obviously, the news that Gao Yanghuai, Jiang Tao, and other Eternal Realm figures had died here had already spread, and the god clans of the various eras in the ruins of fate knew about it. It also made them aware of the danger of annihilation, so they resolutely chose to come and beg for mercy regardless of their dignity and life. Senior, we've been blind in the past, offended your divine power, and made a big mistake. This time, we've come together to ask for your forgiveness. Please, show mercy. The white-haired old man spoke in a trembling voice. All the eyes present also looked at Lin Sun in unison, and there was awe, anxiety, panic, and pleading on their faces. They had no time to care about their dignity and face. For the sake of the lives of their clans, they could only come and beg Lin Sun to forgive them. Otherwise, with Lin Sun's ability, it would be a piece of cake for him to destroy the god clan behind them. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun said, "You can be spared from death, but you can't escape punishment. Hand over the divine level orders in your clans, and I'll let bygones be bygones." Hand over the divine level orders. His words made everyone present turn pale, and their hearts bleed as if they were cut by a knife. The divine level orders were the foundation of a god clan. Losing the protection of the divine level orders would not have a great impact on their clans in a short period of time, but in the long run, their respective forces would suffer a disastrous decline, and the foundation of their clans would gradually decline. But if they didn't hand over the divine level orders, they would probably face Lin Sun's wrath. What, you don't want to? Lin Sun sneered. The Pu clan is willing. Suddenly, a man in a purple robe shouted, "As long as we can get your forgiveness, our Pu clan will send the divine level orders to the divine city of fate within 7 days. Okay. Lin Sun nodded. Seeing this, the others present also spoke. The Yen clan is also willing to offer the divine level orders. The Liangqiu clan is willing to listen to Senior's arrangements and hand over the divine level orders. For a time, more than a dozen god clans agreed. Lin Sun could not help but feel surprised. Was his word so effective now? From this, it could be seen that the battle a few days ago had clearly frightened these god clans. Only then would they be willing to do this. Senior, our clan has lost the divine level orders a long time ago. What should we do? There were also people who had anxious expressions and spoke in panic. Such situations were not uncommon. Soon, other god clans experts also spoke up, hoping to compensate with other treasures. Then just hand over the clan-hallowed treasures of your clans, Lin Sun said without hesitation. Immediately, those god clans experts who did not have the divine level orders heaved a long sigh of relief. Senior, the divine level orders are too precious. We can't make the decision on our own. We need to return to the clan to discuss this. Can you give us some time so we can make a decision as soon as possible? There were also many people who spoke up anxiously. Sure, you must give me an answer within 3 days. As for those who have already agreed to hand over the divine level orders and clan-hallowed treasures, they must be sent to the divine city of fate within 7 days. Lin Sun said casually. He was not coveting the divine level orders. Instead, he wanted to make use of this matter to see if the god clans in the world were sincere in atoning for their sins. This would determine his attitude toward these god clans. Yes. Everyone agreed. Lin Sun no longer paid attention to these people. With a single step, his figure swept into the divine city of fate. It was only when they saw Lin Sun's figure disappear that these god clans experts, who were kneeling in the void, stood up as if a heavy burden had been lifted from their shoulders. Fortunately, things have finally taken a turn for the better. Now I can finally return and explain to my clans. Some were so excited that they felt tears welling up in their eyes. Ever since they learned that Gao Yanghuai, Jiang Tao, and the other eternal realm existences had been completely annihilated, the god clans in the world had been unable to eat or sleep in peace. They were filled with fear and despair. The worst thing was, even if they wanted to escape, they could not escape from the ruins of fate. Now, although Lin Sun's request was a little harsh, it was still within their acceptable range. Of course, not everyone was very happy. There were also many who were filled with bitterness, heaviness, and helplessness. This was because they knew that if they did this, their clans would not have an easy time in the future. Let's go. Let's quickly return and inform the clans of this news. Yes, there's no time to lose. Let's go. Very soon, these god clans experts left in a hurry and disappeared into the vast starry sky. Chapter 3155. Divine City of Fortune. In an ancient palace, a banquet was being held. Lin Sun was seated in the center of the main seat. On both sides of the hall sat Weiyang, Xingjia, and the other sages of the ancient Desolation region, as well as Xian Feiling, Duguyong, and Fang Daoping. Everyone drank and chatted, and the atmosphere was harmonious. By the end of the banquet, the arrangements for the people of the primordial realm had been finalized. Divine City of Fortune was huge, no different from a small world. It was more than enough to accommodate everyone in the primordial realm. However, with more people, rules and order were needed. Otherwise, there would inevitably be dispute. Lin Sun left these matters to Weiyang, Xian Feiling, and the others. There was only one thing Lin Sun had to do, and that was to transform the Divine City of Fortune. Not only did he have to expand, but he also had to open up some secret realms to satisfy everyone's cultivation need. Fortunately, he was the master of the Divine City of Fortune and controlled the rules of the city. Moreover, he had plenty of divine materials to transform the city. In short, Lin Sun's plan was to turn the Divine City of Fortune into a pure land suitable for everyone's cultivation. He didn't have to worry about encountering the Great Silence lifeless calamity, nor did he have to worry about the impact of the end of an era. On the same day, Lin Sun's figure rose into the air and stood in the sky above the Divine City of Fortune. He lowered his eyes and looked down at the majestic and ancient city. Then, he slowly extended his hands and held them up in the air. Rise! Lin Sun's mind moved. Boom. The rule power that enveloped the divine city of fortune suddenly rumbled, and billions of dazzling lights of the great path shot out. Wu Yang, Xian Feiling, and the others who stood in the city could clearly feel the subtle and shocking changes in the rules of the city. In the past, anyone who set foot on the immortal path would have their cultivation suppressed to the Emperor realm. Those in the eternal realm would be repelled and attacked by the rules of the city. But now, with the changes in the rules of the city, it was enough for those in the transcendental realm to enter and exit the city without worrying about their cultivation being suppressed. Such a method is simply stealing all the good fortune. Xing Jia exclaimed. Everyone couldn't help but smile. This was the divine city of fortune. Lin Sun's actions could also be described as stealing all the good fortune. It was a double meaning. Crash, following that, Lin Sun flicked his sleeves, and one divine order after another swept out like a tide, transforming into an invisible canopy that covered the sky above the divine city of fortune. There was a total of 8 divine rank laws, and every single divine rank order was branded with complete grand Tao profundities. All the cultivators that resided within the city were able to comprehend the profundities of these divine rank laws as they cultivated, and it would improve their own cultivation in the grand Tao. One must know that in the 9th heaven, an eternal God only has one divine order at most. But now there were a total of 8 divine rank orders protecting this world. It was easy to imagine how great the benefits one would obtain from cultivating in the city would be. When they saw this scene, Wu Yang and the other existences at the realm of transcendence were all stunned, their eyes staring blankly as their minds roiled endlessly. Someone chuckled and said, "In the entire world, no one can compare to little friend Lin in terms of wealth." Everyone laughed. The number of divine-level sequences Lin Sun possessed was indeed unparalleled. Wu Shuang, from today onward, you'll stand on guard within this city, and you'll be in control of the 8 divine rank orders. Remember, you have to maintain the order within the city, and you're not allowed to cause trouble within the city. High in the sky, Lin Sun whispered. Dressed in white, Wu Shuang, who looked like a pure girl, nodded obediently and said in a clear voice, "Master, Wu Shuang will not let you down." After a pause, she suddenly asked, If Master's relatives and friends cause trouble in the city?" Lin Sun glanced at her and said, "The rules are set by me. If they don't follow the rules, it means they have a problem with me. You should understand what to do, right?" Wu Shuang understood tacitly and smiled sweetly, "Yes." However, although she was a spirit of order, she also knew that sometimes when encountering such things, she had to follow the rules, but also reason. And sometimes reason was often more important than rules. For example, if Lin Sun's son caused trouble in the city, she would definitely do something about it, but how to do it was very particular. For Wu Shuang, she would probably turn a blind eye in such a situation, and it was very likely that she would even provide some help. This was the so-called, the ingenuity of using lies in one's heart. Of course, rules had to be followed, but reason couldn't be left behind. Wu Shuang wasn't so stupid that she couldn't even understand this point. "Go," Lin Sun said. Wu Shuang instantly turned into a beam of light and flew into the sky. And Lin Sun began to move again. Next was to open up the secret space realm. This wasn't difficult for Lin Sun. He had the secret world of core, primordial realm, spiritual realm, Zen realm, and sorcerer realm. Among them, primordial realm was used by the descendants of Yuan Sek's ancestral court. Spiritual realm still belonged to the ancestral court of Spirit Sect. As for Zen realm and sorcerer realm, they could be used by Lin family, Luo family, and other clans. In addition, Lin Sun also has many ancient divine mountains in his hands, such as the divine mountains refined by the 9th heaven after he flattened the 8 eternal god clans, and the divine mountains refined by the Ji clan after he annihilated them. It wasn't an exaggeration to say that any of the divine mountains Lin Sun took out could satisfy the cultivation of an eternal realm expert. And now, Lin soon planned to refine all these secret realms and divine mountains into the divine city of fortune. This was destined to be a huge and complicated project. Fortunately, Lin Sun wasn't short of time. On the third day after Lin Sun's return, some of the God Clan forces in the ruins of fortune sent envoys to express their willingness to offer the divine order power of their clans. 7 days later, all the major God clans in the world sent envoys, each with their divine order and clan treasure. Lin Sun left all these matters to Wu Yang and the others. Later, Lin Sun found out that the divine forces in the hundreds of epochs in the ruins of fate had offered 33 divine-level orders and 81 kinds of treasures of their clans. This was undoubtedly a batch of priceless treasures, enough to make any eternal realm expert go crazy. Lin Sun's method was very simple. He used his name to announce 3 things to the world. First, in the future, the divine city of fortune would be open to all the major god clans in the world, allowing cultivators to trade, cultivate, and communicate with each other. This was to allow the people from the eternal realm to completely integrate into the vast world of the ruins of fortune. They could exchange their needs with each other, and at the same time, they could also improve themselves. Think about it. The integration and exchange of hundreds of epochs in the divine city of fortune was enough to bring great benefits to anyone. This would also have a profound and long-term impact on the path of cultivation. It could be said that if this situation continued, the various cultivation civilizations would very likely merge into a new, different, unified civilization. When they learned of this, all the major god clans in the world were stirred. Countless cultivators were filled with excitement and longing. Senior Lin wants to use the divine city of fortune as the foundation to unify the cultivation civilizations of the world and bring benefits to all generations. Senior Lin's actions can be said to be meritorious to the current generation and benefit the future generations. Some of the god clans who had expressed their allegiance to Lin Sun on the surface but were actually filled with hatred in their hearts couldn't help but be shocked when they learned of this. How could they not know the significance of Lin Sun's actions? In the past, the divine city of fortune was the only place where the major god clans of the world interacted with each other. But at that time, only cultivators below the eternal path of Tao could enter. Moreover, the rules in the city had always been controlled by the top god clans. The order was chaotic, and although there were exchanges between the major god clans, there were more conflicts and collisions. But things were different now. Even eternal realm existences who had surpassed the realm of rules could enter and leave the city from a young age. Moreover, Lin Sun had already established the various rules of the divine city of fortune. Who in the world would dare to disobey them? In this way, the divine city of fortune was bound to become more and more prosperous, and the exchanges and integration between the various god clans were bound to become more frequent and smooth. And this was just the first announcement Lin Sun made to the world. If the impact of the first announcement would only be reflected in the years to come, then the second announcement would excite all the major god clans of the world. I guarantee in my name that within 10,000 years, if the major god clans of the world have no disloyal or hostile intentions, they will all have the opportunity to take away the divine-level orders and the most precious treasures of their clans. These were Lin Sun's original words. At first, when they heard this news, the major god clans of the world couldn't believe it. After all, those were the divine-level orders and the most precious treasures of their clans. They were the supreme treasures that most cultivators in the world dreamed of, who would only spit them out after eating them. But Lin Sun had done it. Even if it was just a promise now, it was already great news for the major god clans of the world. In this world, what could be more joyous than regaining the most precious treasure that had been lost? One must know that the divine-level orders and the most precious treasures of their clans were the foundation of their foothold. It turns out that Senior Lin is not an unreasonable person. There is no need to mention the past grievances. Senior Lin has forgiven us for the mistakes we have made. How can we still take it to heart? From now on, we should be grateful for Senior Lin's kindness and never have any hostility towards Senior Lin again. How can people not be convinced by such a broad-mindedness and courage? Alas, if I had known this earlier, I wouldn't have been blinded by lard and made enemies with Senior Lin. Within 10,000 years, we will have the opportunity to take back the divine level orders of our clans. From now on, we must perform well and strive to get Senior Lin's approval in any case. Only in this way can our clans have a chance to rise and prosper again. For a time, all the major god clans of the world were boiling. It was as if they saw the sun dispelling the clouds and saw the hope of their clans rising again in the future. It was also because of this matter that the attitude of the major god clans towards Lin soon changed subtly. And it could be foreseen that as time went on, this matter was bound to have a far-reaching impact. I will continue to add updates tonight. I wish everyone a happy weekend. Chapter 3156. On the other hand, when Lin soon announced the third matter, it wasn't just the various divine clans in the world, even the countless cultivators throughout the 100-plus civilizations seethed with excitement. The third matter was very simple. Every 1,000 years, the divine city of fortune would hold a Tao discussion. According to the Emperor Tao Path, Eternal Tao Path, and Eternal Tao Path, the Tao discussion was divided into 3 levels. In other words, existences at the Emperor Realm, Eternal Realm, and Eternal Realm could participate in the Tao discussion that corresponded to their own realms of cultivation. Those that were ranked in the top 10 of the Tao discussion would obtain various generous rewards. The rewards included a superb array of treasures, irresistible cultivation resources, and even Lin Sun's recognition and friendship. Of course, there was also reputation and prestige that could be known throughout the world. Just think about it, if one was able to obtain the top 10 in the Tao discussion, then would anyone in the various epochs in the world be unaware of it? Not to mention that one would be able to obtain treasures, cultivation resources, and Lin Sun's acknowledgement. Especially the last point, it was undoubtedly the most important. After all, Lin Sun seemed to be no different than the one and only overlord of the ruins of creation, and a casual word from him might be able to change the fate of a divine clan. This matter must be treated as the most important matter. Once every 1,000 years? But I can't wait any longer. In the future, the Tao discussion is bound to be the most anticipated event in the ruins of creation, and its influence will spread throughout the various cultivation civilizations in the world. The world was seething with excitement, and it caused a mighty uproar everywhere. The 3 matters that Lin Sun announced truly had too great of an impact on the living beings in the entire ruins of creation. This is the broad-mindedness and ability to help the world. Even Wu Yang and the others sighed endlessly with emotion. However, Lin Sun didn't really care about all of this. He merely wanted to use these 3 matters to do something for his loved ones. In this way, even if he was gone in the future, no one in the ruins of creation would be able to shake the foundation that he'd built by himself. After spending an entire 3 months of time, Lin Sun had finally completed the remodeling of Divine City of Creation. The Divine City of Creation looked like a city, but there were passageways leading to the secret realm of Core, the primordial realm, the spirit realm, the shaman realm, the Zen realm, and many other secret realms. Moreover, there were ancient and primitive divine mountains lying across the different areas of the city. They were like the backbone of the entire city, and the arrangement of the divine mountains faintly formed a marvelous formation. When necessary, these divine mountains that were scattered all over the place would transform into a supreme formation that linked up with the 9 levels of divine rank order that covered the heavens and the earth, and it would release a might that was sufficient to easily annihilate existences that had exceeded the realm of justice. Jing Xian, from today onwards, I will be going into seclusion. Inside the secret world of Core Dimension, Lin Sun, Zhao Jingxian, Xia Ji and Lin Fan were having a meal together. How long? Zhao Jingxian asked while putting food into Xia Ji's bowl. 10 years. Lin Sun said casually. After I come out of closed-door cultivation, it's very likely that I'll leave for the Kunlun ruins. Zhao Jingxian was stunned. An indescribable feeling welled up in her heart. Can't I not go? Her voice was filled with reluctance. Lin Fan could not help but say, Mother, there must be a reason why Father is going there. Moreover, Father will return in the future. You don't have to worry so much. Who asked you to talk so much? Zhao Jingxian glared at Lin Fan. The latter was embarrassed and immediately shut up. Lin Sun could not help but smile. He said, Fan is right. I'm going to the Kunlun ruins. Zhao Jingxian interrupted him. I know there's a reason. You don't have to explain. I understand. But you have to be careful. No matter what, you must return safely. Lin Sun's heart felt warm as he said, Don't worry. Xia Ji, who had been immersed in eating, suddenly said, When the time comes, I'll go with you. That way, Sister Jingxian won't have to worry. Lin Sun was stunned. Before he could say anything, Zhao Jingxian said happily, That's even better. With you around, no other woman will dare to get close to him. Even if they do, Sister Xia Ji will definitely be able to settle it. She felt relieved as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. Lin Sun was speechless. So it turned out that Jingxian was worried that he would flirt outside. But the point was he that kind of person? Lin Sun felt wronged. Suddenly, he noticed that Lin Fan was secretly laughing not far away. He immediately said angrily, Are you happy to see your father make a fool of himself? Lin Fan immediately pulled a long face and held back his laughter. He shook his head and said, Father, I think Mother's intentions are also very good. As a man, he must refuse the temptation that he should refuse. Zhao Jingxian reached out and knocked Lin Fan's forehead. She said with a serious expression, Fan you can't think that way. You can't be like your father. You're the only son of our family. I'm still waiting for you to spread our family's branches. In the future, the more wives you marry, the better. It's normal for cultivators like us to have 3 or 4 wives. Of course, if 3 or 4 wives aren't enough, you can marry more. In short, the more the better. Lin Sun was stunned. Lin Fan was also stunned. The father and son stared at each other with question marks in their hearts. How could this be? At this time, Lin Wenjing and Luo Qingxuan came. As soon as Lin Sun invited his parents to sit down, Luo Qingxuan said with a smile, Speaking of which, Sun is also the only son of our family. Now, I can't wait for him to marry Xia Solstice as soon as possible and give me more grandchildren. In this way, the pressure on Lin Fan won't be so heavy. His words caused the atmosphere to become subtle. Just now, Zhao Jingxian was talking about Lin Fan's uniqueness. Now, Luo Qingxuan was also talking about Lin Sun's being the only son of the family. The two mothers had a tacit understanding in treating their sons. However, this tacit understanding made Zhao Jingxian feel a sudden increase in pressure. After thinking about it, she said with a smile, Of course, I want to welcome Xia Solstice into the family as soon as possible, but it also depends on his will. If he really wants to marry more women in the future, I will also accept it. She had already glanced at Lin Sun. Well, I'm very pleased that Jingxian can think like this. Luo Qingxuan smiled with satisfaction and also looked at Lin Sun. The atmosphere was very strange. Lin Fan sensed it and tactfully kept his mouth shut. Lin Sun suddenly felt a headache. He couldn't help looking at Lin Wenjing beside him and said, Father, why don't you say anything? Lin Wenjing ate and drank by himself and said vaguely, Don't drag me into this. You can decide this kind of thing by yourself. He had a calm demeanor, as if he had nothing to do with it. Lin Sun stood up directly and said, You guys continue to eat. I'm done. I'll go to work first. Without waiting for the others to respond, he hurried away. Ha ha, Father actually slipped away. Lin Fan couldn't help laughing. Interesting, too interesting. But the next moment Lin Fan smiled. He didn't come out. Luo Qingxuan and Zhao Jingxian looked at him with kind eyes. Luo Qingxuan said gently, "Fan, what your mother said just now is right. You are shouldering the heavy responsibility of our Lin family. Look, your grandmother also agrees with my suggestion. Fan, you can't let us down." Zhao Jingxian also said with a smile. Now it was Lin Fan's turn to be like sitting on pins and needles. He suddenly wanted to follow his father's example and slip away. From this day onwards, Lin soon began to retreat in the secret world of heart. The creation realm is the second realm of the eternal path. After reaching this realm, cultivation will become extremely difficult. The reason is that to improve one's cultivation base, one needs to refine the rule power. The most complete rule power in the world is generally contained in the divine order, and the divine order has always been an extremely scarce cultivation resource in this world. All of this caused the path of cultivation of existences in the creation realm to be filled with difficulties. But for Lin Sun, none of this is a problem. In these years, he first swept the major god clans of the ninth heaven, then successively destroyed the witch sect, Zen sect, and even the Ji clan of the ruins of fortune was flattened by him. Just these experiences have allowed him to obtain a large number of divine order and various divine medicines that are enough to satisfy the cultivation of the creation realm. In addition, there have been hundreds of eternal realm characters suppressed by him over the years. After being refined by the 5 sequences of the ultimate ruins, all of them can be refined into the eternal law comparable to the divine order. Under such circumstances, for Lin Sun, the cultivation of the creation realm is even easier than the cultivation of the transgression realm. Time passed, 1 year after another. The brand new divine creation city became bustling and prosperous once more. Along with the passage of time, cultivators from the various cultivation civilizations in the world gathered here from all over the world. They were either here to cultivate, to trade, or to communicate with each other. Moreover, with the various divine order controlled by Wushuang, the city seemed to be peaceful and prosperous. Regardless of cultivation base, everyone behaved according to the rules. Even the powerful existences of the eternal realm didn't dare to cause trouble in the city. All of this made the divine city of fortune exude an orderly and prosperous atmosphere. And everyone in the primordial realm also quickly integrated into the divine city of fortune. Every day, they came into contact with cultivators from different eras and civilizations, which broadened their horizons and benefited a lot. Wu Yang and the others, who saw all of this, couldn't help but look forward to it. Under Lin Sun's influence, perhaps one day, the civilizations of the various eras in the world can really merge together, forming a unified cultivation era. The only thing that made people feel uneasy was that the surroundings of the ruins of fortune were still covered by the power of the mastermind behind the scenes, like an invisible cage. However, whether it was the crisis of the end of an era, the 5 signs of decay that targeted all living beings in the world, or the great silence lifeless tribulation that targeted eternal figures, none of them would happen in the divine city of fortune. In fact, for the cultivators of the various eras in the ruins of fortune, they never had to worry about the impact of the end of an era. Even the great silence lifeless tribulation was only a sharp sword hanging over the heads of eternal realm figures, and as long as they hid in the divine city of fortune, they didn't have to worry about being attacked. In short, since Lin Sun took charge of the divine city of fortune, the ruins of fortune ushered in an unprecedented period of peace and tranquility. All of this was seen by all living beings in the world, and they were more and more grateful to Lin Sun. Tomorrow, the plot of Kunlun ruins will start. Chapter 3157. 10 years later, Lin Sun walked out of his closed-door cultivation. Now, he was already at the middle stage of creation realm, only a step away from the late stage. However, it was also this step that caused Lin Sun's cultivation to hit a bottleneck. This bottleneck could not be broken by refining divine order, nor could it be broken by closed-door cultivation. It needed to be settled and tempered. Lin Sun was not surprised, and he was confident that with his current combat strength, he was not afraid of the threat from the boundless realm. When he had just broken through to the creation realm, he could defeat enchanting, a boundless realm existence, let alone now that he was at the middle stage of creation realm. Walking out of the cave residence, Lin Sun did not disturb anyone. He left the secret realm of creation and walked into the divine city of creation. Compared to the desolate desolation of 10 years ago, the city had become incomparably bustling. Figures could be seen everywhere as they rubbed shoulders with each other, and all sorts of clamorous and bustling sounds rose and fell. Lin Sun's aura was restrained, so no one noticed his existence when he walked, so he did not attract any attention along the way. Just like that, he walked and looked around. Cultivators from different eras and civilizations could be seen everywhere. They came from different clans and creatures with strange appearances. Their cultivations varied from high to low. The strong ones were at the eternal realm, while the weak ones were only at the saint realm. But no matter who it was, they were calm and peaceful, without any disputes. When everyone obeyed the rules of the city, a peaceful and prosperous scene was formed. Lin Sun also saw cultivators from Lin family, Luo family, Ji clan and other clans distributed in the city, each doing their own thing. Everyone was busy with their own affairs, relaxed and full of vitality. Because everyone knew that in the city, there was no need to worry about any danger. Lin Sun felt a little emotional. If every place in the world was such a prosperous and peaceful scene, how good it would be. When Lin Sun came to the silent night ridge, he suddenly noticed a familiar figure. That person was wearing an old black armor, with a cold face and a slender figure. He was drinking alone in front of the hall on the mountain ridge, with a lazy and peaceful aura. "Senior, when did you come back?" Lin Sun walked to that person and said with a smile. This person was the battle servant of the Eternal Night Divine Emperor, 13. 13 was stunned when he saw Lin Sun, and then a smile appeared on the corners of his mouth. He stood up and said, "I came back 5 years ago." With that, he couldn't help but look at Lin Sun up and down. "I already know what you have done in the past few years. My master didn't misjudge you." Lin Sun said with a smile, "I won't leave again." 13 nodded. The Fortune Divine City is known as the #1 pure land in the ruins of Fortune. It's a supreme sacred land in the eyes of millions of living beings. Even Eternal Realm cultivators are willing to cultivate here. "Unless you kick me out, I won't leave." He was not exaggerating. The Fortune Divine City was covered with 8 levels of divine order, and there were many ancient and primitive divine mountains scattered throughout the city. Cultivating here was enough to benefit even an Eternal Realm expert. Who would choose to leave? Presently, in the various cultivation eras of the world, countless youths had come to the divine city of fortune to cultivate, and it was a goal they had to achieve in their lives. Lin Sun was also very happy and said, "It's good that you're not leaving." As he spoke, he took out a pot of wine and sat down with 13, drinking and chatting. It wasn't until dusk that Lin Sun got up and left. He watched as his figure disappeared into the distance. In the vast sea of people, 13 murmured, "Master, if you were still here, you would definitely be very pleased." That night, a banquet was set up. The banquet included Lin Wenjing, Luo Qingxuan, Lin Fan, Su Bai Tangjiang, Gu Shi, Hu, Old Toad, Lu, and Little Silver. In addition, Wuyang and the other sages of the ancient Desolation region, Xian Failing and the other elders of the Yuan sect, Shi and the Ji Shanhai sisters, Lin Zhong, Shi Yu, and other relatives and friends were all present. The banquet was very lively. Everyone toasted and laughed, harmonious and joyful. It wasn't until late at night that the banquet came to an end. "You and Xia Ji have to take care of yourselves on this trip to the Kunlun ruins." The night was as dark as ink. Only Zhao Jingxian accompanied Lin Sun and reminded him softly, "As for the matters at home, don't worry." "Okay." Lin Sun agreed with a smile. This time, he decided to bring the 5 Tao bodies with him. Otherwise, if he had the chance to prove the boundless realm in the future, if the great Tao clone was not around, his great Tao was destined to be incomplete. However, Lin Sun would leave his willpower behind. In fact, in the current divine city of fortune, there was no need to worry about any danger at all. Because apart from the many divine level orders controlled by Wushuang, there was also the river diagram treasure guarding here. In addition to Wuyang and more than 20 eternal realm figures, who in the world could shake them? Even if another envoy of destiny appeared, there was still the river diagram to resist. When the night faded and dawn broke, the divine city of fortune was still as bustling and lively as before, and Lin Sun had already left quietly with Xia Ji. It did not cause any waves. Kunlun Ruins. One of the 4 great Tao ruins in the world. There were the 9 forbidden 3 secrets distributed here. It was also the place where the myriad Tao source furnace was born and refined the famous 9 great weapons. In the past, the Kunlun ruins seemed cold and barren. Although there were many opportunities distributed, it could only attract people below the Emperor realm to explore. During the period when the era calamity was about to appear in every era, the Kunlun ruins would become the place where the eternal realm figures fought. Because every time this happened, the origin energy of the Kunlun ruins, the Sea of Destiny, would appear, and the opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao would be born on this sea. Under the threat of the great silence calamity that could descend at any time, no eternal realm figure could refuse such an opportunity. Half a month later, at the entrance of the flying immortal river in the Kunlun ruins, Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air. When he saw the flying immortal river that seemed to be falling from the sky, his eyes could not help but be in a trance. When he was young, Lin Sun had been to the Kunlun ruins. He had once fought a group of heroes here, seen the purple figure who was extremely infatuated with his eldest senior brother in the Peach Blossom secret realm, and he had also seen the great Tao Lawless Bell in the Mount Yulong secret realm in the forbidden area of the Ascension platform. He had met his 9th senior brother Guyupu for the first time, and he had obtained the inheritance of the Golden Court scripture and the 3,000 ups and downs. He was also consecrated as a saint here, creating an unprecedented miracle. Later on, Lin Sun had returned to the Kunlun ruins again and passed through one of the 3 forbidden areas, the Tao Suppression Cliff, to listen to the guidance and teachings of the great Tao Lawless Bell. Back then, it was also in front of the Tao Suppression Cliff that she was taken away by the powerhouse of his clan, Jun Fenglai. Everything in the past had turned into indelible memories that were branded in Lin Sun's heart. Now, he would once again return to the Kunlun ruins. Taking a deep breath, Lin Sun calmed himself down. He knew very well that the current Kunlun ruins was an extremely dangerous place. Over the years, no one knew how many Eternal Realm old fellows had gathered here. Among them, there was no lack of creation and boundless realm experts. I wonder how eldest senior brother and the others are now. Back then, second senior brother Zhongqiu had gone to the Yuan sect and told Lin Sun that after eldest senior brother and the others escaped from the Taiyu True Realm, they had already headed to the Kunlun ruins. It was also at that time that senior sister Ruo Su and the other senior brothers and sisters who were originally cultivating in the spirit sect followed eldest senior brother. Only 4th senior brother Ling Xuanzi was in the graveyard of the ultimate ruins. As he pondered, Lin Sun had already started walking along the Flying Fairy River. The source of the Flying Fairy River was a space-time vortex. The mighty Flying Fairy River surged out from it, and it was also the door to the Kunlun ruins. When Lin Sun arrived, he immediately sensed that the space-time vortex was covered in an extremely powerful rule energy. It was like a barrier that lay there, and it was completely different from before. Only those who have set foot on the eternal Tao path can withstand the power of this rule barrier. I wonder how eldest senior brother and the others entered back then. Lin Sun pondered for a moment before walking over. Whoosh! The power of the rule barrier instantly boiled, producing a terrifying pressure and repulsive force. However, it could not stop Lin Sun's footsteps at all. In the blink of an eye, his figure disappeared within Kunlun ruins. Lin Sun's figure appeared out of thin air in the ancient and primitive world. In an instant, Lin Sun sensed an aura that was completely different from before. There was a taboo rule energy distributed between heaven and earth. It was enough to allow an eternal stage cultivator to walk freely without worrying about the backlash from the rule of heaven and earth. Besides that, this expanse of the heavens and the earth was filled with abundant fluctuations of vitality, and it was like a shapeless tide that surged through space. It's indeed different from before. Lin Sun took a deep breath and sensed the world as he walked forward. Along the way, he was extremely cautious. However, even after he passed through many areas, he did not see anyone. There was not even a trace of movement. Could it be that those almighties who came to the Kunlun ruins have already headed to the nameless forbidden area? Lin Sun pondered. The Kunlun ruins was distributed with the 9 secrets and 3 forbidden areas. The 9 secrets referred to the area where the 9 secret realms were located. Back then, Lin Sun had entered the Peach Blossom Secret Realm, Mount Yulong Secret Realm, and so on. The 3 forbidden areas were the Pilgrimage Platform, the Tao Suppression Cliff, and the Nameless Forbidden Area. Among them, only the Nameless Forbidden Area had never been to. The reason was that the Nameless Forbidden Area was the most dangerous of the 3 forbidden areas. Back then, Lin Sun did not have the ability to explore it at all. Later on, Lin Sun had heard from the great Tao Lawless Bell that the Kunlun ruins was regarded as the ancestral court of the great Tao. Since ancient times, there had been rumors that the ancestral origin aura of all Taos in the world could be found in the Kunlun ruins. The Nameless Forbidden Area was the most mysterious place in the Kunlun ruins. Rumor had it that there was a broken path in the Nameless Forbidden Area. It cut through heaven and earth, the great Tao and everything. There were also rumors that the Nameless Forbidden Area was the origin of the Kunlun ruins. It was also at that time that the great Tao Lawless Bell told Lin Sun that his master, the master of the Heart Core, had once explored the Nameless Forbidden Area. All of this gave Lin Sun a premonition when he came to the Kunlun ruins. If there was a place that was most likely to find the Ocean of Destiny, it would undoubtedly be the Nameless Forbidden Area in the Kunlun ruins. The second time would be a little late. Chapter 3158. Thinking of this, Lin Sun no longer hesitated and moved directly to the place where the Nameless Forbidden Area was located. Soon, a strange world appeared in his sight. The sky here had collapsed into one enormous black hole after another. It was strangely motionless, causing one to shudder with fear. On the ground, there were deep gullies and abysses everywhere, which were dense and continuous. This was the famous heaven-collapsing and earth-collapsing place. The Great Way Lawless Bell once brought Lin Sun here, and the Nameless Forbidden Area was at the end of this strange world. It was a vast black nothingness, completely submerged by the eternal darkness. Now, when Lin Sun came here again, he had already reached the middle stage of Creation Realm. But when he saw the Nameless Forbidden Area submerged in the darkness in the distance, he still felt a trace of fear. After a moment of silence, Lin Sun went straight to the distance. The world was desolate, empty, silent, and frighteningly quiet. The huge black holes that had collapsed in the sky were like empty eyes, and the abysses and ravines on the ground were like bloody mouths that had been opened wide. Walking in it, Lin Sun felt a sense of oppression. But unexpectedly, there was no danger along the way. After a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun stepped into the nothingness submerged in the darkness. It was turbid here. There was no sky, no earth, no mountains and rivers, only a kind of oppressive darkness and nothingness. It was chilling to be in it. Lin Sun couldn't help running his own cultivation, and became more cautious and careful. Where is the sea of fate? He spread his divine awareness and sensed it calmly. After a while, he suddenly noticed that there was a faint light and shadow flickering in the darkness far away, as if it was breathing. It was extremely difficult to find it if he didn't sense it carefully. Immediately, Lin Sun rushed forward. Gradually, he was finally able to discern that the wisp of light was actually a mysterious door. The portal seemed to be illusory, looming in the darkness. The portal was surrounded by obscure and mysterious power fluctuations. When Lin Sun sensed it with his divine awareness, something strange happened. Invisible power fluctuations emerged around the portal, which submerged Lin Sun's figure like a tide. Before he could react, he was swept away uncontrollably. Where is this? When Lin Sun regained his consciousness, the first thing he saw was a vast sea. The sea was extremely vast and stretched across the sky. The vast white waves surged endlessly into the distance, and one couldn't see the end of it. On the other hand, the surging sea was formed from the energy of the Grand Tao that seemed like a taboo. At a glance, it caused others to involuntarily arouse the feeling of being tiny like a grain in the ocean. The boundless ocean surged above the 9 heavens. This scene caused Lin Sun to be shocked. It was extremely likely that this was the legendary Sea of Destiny, a mystical place formed from the origin energy of the Kunlun ruins. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that the Sea of Fate covered the sky and people could only look up at it like ants. I didn't expect that there would still be people coming at a time like this. How surprising! Suddenly, an aged voice sounded from afar. Lin Sun was shocked and looked into the distance. This was a boundless world. Mountains rose and fell, and the land was vast. However, it was gray everywhere, and it was shrouded in grayish-white mist. It seemed extremely mysterious. However, he couldn't figure out where the aged voice came from for a moment. Lin Sun's expression remained unchanged as he continued to size up his surroundings. At this moment, he was at the center of an ancient altar. Moreover, the surroundings of the altar were enshrouded in strands of rule energy, and it was like a layer of barrier that protected the entire altar. Looks like if I leave this altar, it's equivalent to I'll lose some sort of protection. Lin Sun vaguely understood. He was completely unfamiliar with the world before him. Other than recognizing the Sea of Destiny, he knew nothing else. This made him have no choice but to be extremely cautious. Fellow Taoist, since you're already here, why don't you walk out of the Destiny altar? Suddenly, a teasing laughter sounded out. You should know that from now on, it's impossible for you to leave the Sea of Destiny even if you want to. Lin Sun looked over and finally vaguely saw a figure sitting on a small hill in the distant gray mist. However, because of the rule energy around the altar, he couldn't sense it with his divine awareness. Haha, old monster Xing, it seems that you're restless again. Aren't you afraid that this new fellow Taoist is a tough guy who will beat you to your knees and beg for mercy? A cold female voice sounded leisurely. Don't say that. It's easy to make the new fellow Taoist misunderstand. The figure called Old Monster Xing, who was sitting cross-legged on the small hill, hurriedly explained. Suddenly, another voice that was heavy like iron resounded. You really talk a lot of nonsense. All of you shut up. Allow me to have a chat with this new fellow Taoist. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when an extremely tall and lofty figure appeared out of thin air in the distant dusky world. He was like a lone mountain, and he wore dark red battle armor. His hair was as black as ink, and his eyes flashed with lightning. His mountain-like figure exuded a strong and terrible eternal breath, which belonged to the power of the creation realm. With his appearance, all the sounds in the nearby area suddenly disappeared. But Lin Sun noticed that at this moment, in the gray world, there were many eyes secretly watching here. The tall man strode over until he was about 300 meters away from the altar. He stared at Lin Sun in the center of the altar like lightning and said, "Would you like to tell us your background?" Lin Sun said calmly, "If you give me a reason, maybe I don't mind telling you my background." The tall man frowned and said, "I didn't expect fellow Taoists to be so cautious. It's fine, this is the ocean of fate after all. There are dangers everywhere. It's normal for a newcomer to be cautious since he doesn't know anything. Lin Sun thought for a while. So, you took the initiative to ask me questions because you saw me coming here alone? Smart man. There was a laugh in the distance. Generally speaking, if you come from a powerful force like the eternal God race, you're destined not to travel alone. In other words, if you traveled alone, you usually wouldn't come from a powerful force like the eternal God race. The meaning of this was very subtle. Lin Sun could naturally sense it. He said indifferently, I am indeed not from a powerful force like the eternal God race. As soon as he finished speaking, he acutely sensed that the tall man 300 meters away had clearly relaxed a lot. Even the way he looked at Lin Sun was not as cautious and vigilant as before. Instead, there was a trace of unscrupulousness. This made Lin Sun's heart tremble. Was the other party here to probe him and then make a move after learning about him? You must have many questions in your heart. In truth, in the past, anyone who came to the Sea of Destiny alone was as vigilant and careful as you are, the tall man said in a low voice. In truth, when we first came here, we were just like you now. We didn't know anything, but that's not important. What's important is that if fellow Taoist is willing to join our side, then from now on, we'll be companions. We'll tell you everything you don't know. As he spoke, his eyes were fixed on Lin Sun, observing his reaction. What if I don't agree? Lin Sun said calmly. The tall man seemed to have expected Lin Sun's question. He said without hesitation, That's our opponent. If you want to leave this place, you'll have to pass through us. How? Lin Sun's expression grew calmer. Of course, we'll see who's the winner, the tall man said in a deep voice. If you win, you can walk away. If you lose, you only have two choices left. Which two? Lin Sun continued to ask. The tall man frowned and said, Either you hand over all your treasures as the price of the loser, or you choose to join our camp and act with us in the future. Lin Sun seemed to be relieved and said with a smile, I thought I'd die if I failed. It seems that you're all very cautious and don't dare to say anything to scare me. The old voice sounded from afar. Only fierce dragons dare to cross the river. Those who dare to cross the Sea of Destiny are no ordinary people. You may not be from a powerful force like the eternal God race, and I don't know you, but if you are a fierce dragon, we don't want to offend you. Lin Sun nodded and said, I see. However, although I've just arrived and I know nothing about this place, do you think I will rashly decide to join a camp that I don't know at all under such circumstances? Fellow Taoist, you have no other choice. The tall man seemed to be a little impatient. What's more, I've said before that as long as you join our camp, we'll tell you everything you want to know. Lin Sun sneered, I'm sorry. If I didn't know these things, I wouldn't have agreed so easily. The piercingly cold female voice resounded. Fellow Taoist, traveling the Sea of Destiny by yourself is bound to be a perilous fate. We invited you to join us because we want to stay together. Only in this way will we have a chance to fight for territory with those great powers. I hope you can reconsider. Compete for a position? Lin Sun was surprised and couldn't help asking, What position do you want to compete for? Taoism peer, you have too many questions. The tall man finally lost his patience. I just want to ask you, what choice do you want to make? Lin Sun sighed softly. I'm new here, and I really don't want to fight with people who have no grudges against me. Why do you have to force me? He didn't expect to encounter such a thing as soon as he arrived at the Sea of Destiny. Look, I've said before, instead of talking nonsense, it's better to fight at the first moment. If we win, this new fellow will consider our conditions seriously. On a small hill in the distance, the man called Old Strange Xing muttered helplessly, What's the use of talking so much now? It's never a bad thing to be careful. What's more, if this new fellow doesn't come out of the altar of destiny, we can't fight even if we want to. The old voice sounded. After that, the piercingly cold female voice resounded, "Fellow Taoist, even if you're protected by the Destiny Tao Altar's energy now, you'll still be sent out by the Destiny Tao Altar's energy in 2 hours. At that time, you're bound to fight. Are you sure you don't want to reconsider?" She didn't seem to want to fight with Lin Sun. Lin Sun also heard the persuasion in her voice. Unfortunately, he didn't know the situation of the camp, and even if he knew, he couldn't join. He shook his head. The next moment, under everyone's surprised gaze, Lin Sun's figure walked straight out of the altar of destiny. "If you want to decide who's the winner before letting me leave, I can do it now." Lin Sun's eyes swept around, and finally fell on the tall figure hundreds of meters away. He said indifferently, "Do you want to fight together or one by one?" He stood with his hands behind his back, and his indifferent voice resounded through the world. "There's no more for tonight. I need to go through the details of the next plot. I'll continue to update tomorrow." Chapter 3159. Watching Lin Sun's figure walk out of the Taoist altar, the nearby area was silent. Those figures hiding in the dark were all very surprised. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so fearless and calm. Especially when they heard Lin Sun's declaration of war, they couldn't help but be awestruck. Lin Sun's seemingly calm but extremely tough attitude made them not dare to act rashly. 300 meters away, the mountain-like man also frowned. His eyes flickered, and his heart was full of uncertainty. Seeing this, Lin Sun couldn't help but smile. He had to admit that these guys were very cautious, but it was precisely because of this caution that the situation wouldn't become too serious. "Old Een, let's test the ability of this new fellow practitioner." In the distance, the old voice sounded. The tall man called Old Een nodded and tossed it into the air. Clatter suddenly, a layer of shimmering purple divine light turned into a sky curtain covering the whole world. This was a complete god-level order. Seeing this, Lin Sun said thoughtfully, "It turns out that you are also worried that the noise caused by the battle will be noticed by others." There was no panic or tension. Lin Sun's calm posture made those figures in the dark more and more difficult to see through him. Before the battle started, the cold female voice sounded again. "Old Een, we have no grievances with this fellow practitioner. Don't go too far." "Okay." The tall figure agreed. "What do you think?" The cold female voice asked Lin Sun. "Okay." Lin Sun said casually. "Sorry." The tall figure took a deep breath. His mountain-like figure steamed with eternal golden light, and his momentum suddenly rose to the extreme. His momentum was even stronger than that of Gao Yanghuai and Jiang Tao, who were also in the creation realm. "Rise." He let out an explosive shout that was like a clap of thunder. A golden river of flames appeared out of thin air in front of him, and it suddenly transformed into a golden sword. Although this sword was only 2 feet long, the sword intent it released was as majestic and heavy as an ancient divine mountain, which seemed to be able to suppress the whole world. Golden flame sword. The figures in the distance noticed this scene and felt much more at ease. This was condensed from Old Yin's supreme divine ability, and it was the manifestation of his most powerful combat strength. The might of a single sword strike could sweep through a large world and crush the sun, moon, and stars. From this, it could be seen that Old Een was already treating him like a ferocious dragon crossing the river, and he wasn't careless in the slightest. "Go." The tall figure's eyes were like cold lightning as he waved his sleeve. Heaven and earth trembled as the dazzling golden Tao sword streaked across the sky. Whoosh! The sword insight was vast and mighty, and it was like golden flames were burning the 9 heavens. Such a strike could be said to be a peak strike in the creation realm, and it was peerlessly powerful. But Lin Sun stood still and just stretched out his hand and clapped in the void. He heard bang. A muffled explosion sounded out, and the golden flames that filled the sky suddenly collapsed and spread out. The tall man's golden Tao sword was actually shattered by this simple palm strike. The pupils of the people in the dark shrank, and their minds suffered a great shock. At the same time, Lin Sun's figure disappeared out of thin air. The powerful sword was shattered by a slap, which made the tall man suffer a great shock. When he noticed that Lin Sun was coming to kill him, he didn't dare to hesitate. After a moment of hesitation, Zhang Xian immediately activated his trump card. Tut! The dark red armor that covered the tall figure's body suddenly burst with dazzling light. Mysterious and obscure flame totems condensed in the void and turned into a total of 36 layers of defensive seals. The power of rules contained within them was extremely powerful. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun had punched down from the sky, like a god waving a hammer and smashing the world. Bang! 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 A series of dense collisions sounded. Visible to the naked eye, under Lin Sun's punch, the layers of defensive seals exploded like layers of fragile glass, bursting out a heavy rain of rules like wave. In the end, along with a rumble that shook the heavens and the earth, the tall figure's body that was mighty like a mountain was directly blasted flying by a single punch. In the end, it crashed to the ground 3 kilometers away with a thump, and it caused dust and smoke to cover the sky. Old Een! How could it be? He's so strong! A wave of exclamations resounded as numerous figures flashed out from the dark gray world in all directions, and they rushed to the side of the tall figure at the first possible moment. I've lost. The tall figure crawled up from the ground with a wisp of horror and astonishment still lingering on his face, and his voice was filled with frustration and bitterness. When they noticed that the tall figure wasn't injured, all of them heaved a sigh of relief in unison. After that, their gazes simultaneously looked towards Lin Sun in the distance, and their expressions changed to reveal fear. This unfamiliar young man was indeed a tyrannical and unparalleled, ferocious dragon. The tall figure's combat strength was one of the best amongst them, but he couldn't even resist a single blow. It was obvious how powerful the young man was. At the same time, Lin Sun saw 3 figures clearly. They were 2 men and 1 woman. One was the man who sat cross-legged on the hill earlier. He wore a white robe and a high hat, and he looked as handsome as a young man. The other was an old man who was thin and stooped, and he carried a huge black sword case on his back. The last was a woman in a black robe. Her figure was slender and graceful, and her pretty face was plain and fair. Just like the tall man, these 3 people were all at the peak of the creation realm. In the current eternal true world, it was impossible to see such an almighty. Even in the ruins of fate, only the top 10 Protoss forces had such a powerful figure, and they were all destroyed by Lin Sun at that time. But now, he had just arrived at the forbidden area of the Sea of Destiny, and he already saw 4 such almighty. Lin Sun couldn't help but feel apprehensive. Of course, he had expected such a situation a long time ago. After all, this was the Sea of Destiny. In the past years, whether it was the 12 eternal god clans of the 9th heaven or the old fellows of the 4 ancestral halls, all of them had rushed here for the sake of fighting for the opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao. Under such circumstances, the Sea of Destiny had already become a dangerous place where eternal realm existences gathered. Fellow Taoist, your combat strength is tyrannical. We have offended you before. In the distance, the black-robed woman cupped her hands. Now, fellow Taoist, you can leave on your own. We will no longer obstruct you. At the same time, the tall man waved his hand and removed the divine order power that covered the world. However, Lin Sun had no intention of leaving. He said, "Since all of you have admitted defeat, can we have a good chat now?" He had many doubts in his heart. Instead of taking the risk to explore, it was better to take the opportunity to find out some information he wanted to know from the other party. The black-robed woman and the others looked at each other and didn't refuse. Fellow Taoist, to be honest, the 4 of us have been walking on the periphery of the spiritual martial forbidden area all these years. Although we know a lot of things, we only know a part of it. The black-robed woman said softly. That's fine. Lin Sun said, I just need to understand the general situation of the Sea of Destiny. The black-robed woman took out a jade slip and handed it to Lin Sun. Why don't you take a look at the things recorded in this jade slip? Lin Sun took the jade slip and flipped through it. The Sea of Destiny was formed by the origin power of the Kunlun ruins. Every time the calamity of an era came, the Sea of Destiny would appear in the nameless forbidden area. Only at this time would the Eternal Realm have a chance to fight for an opportunity to go to the ruins of Tao. The Sea of Destiny covered an extremely large area. Many eras ago, many experts who had stepped into the Eternal Realm had gathered here. What was even more amazing was that the Eternal Realm experts of each epoch would enter a different plane after arriving at the Sea of Fate. The plane world that Lin Sun and the others were in at the moment was newly born in this era. Any Eternal Realm expert of this era who came here would be moved to this plane world. Therefore, this place was also called the Spiritual Martial Realm. According to the records in the Jade Slip, there were many other plane worlds under the Sea of Destiny. Those plane worlds were born in previous eras. If the nameless forbidden area was compared to a lotus, then the plane worlds born in each era were like layers of petals, and the Sea of Fate lay on this lotus. This was the layout of the entire nameless forbidden area. The current spiritual martial realm was divided into the core area and the outer area. The core area was the place closest to the Sea of Destiny. Therefore, the core area had the highest chance of fighting for the opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao. Presently, the core area had long since been occupied and controlled by the various great powers. For example, the 12 eternal god clans and the 4 ancestral halls. On the other hand, the outer area was filled with figures that couldn't compare to those great powers in terms of foundation or combat strength. For example, the black-robed woman and the other 3 could only travel in the outer area of the spiritual martial realm. At the same time, there were some other records in the Jade Slip. For example, the core area was regarded as the myriad Tao ancestral root of the spiritual martial realm. Even Eternal Realm experts would be able to obtain immeasurable benefits from cultivating there. It was like an unexpected movement would erupt in the Sea of Destiny at regular intervals, and it was like a tide. At that time, a grand Tao lotus would surge into appearance. The opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao was hidden within the grand Tao life lotus. Every single grand Tao life lotus could only accommodate 3 Eternal Realm experts, and it would bring them along the Sea of Destiny towards the ruins of Tao. It could be imagined that when such an opportunity appeared, it would definitely cause a terrifying storm of blood. According to the records in the Jade Slip, up until now, the Sea of Destiny had erupted 3 times, and 3 grand Tao life lotuses had appeared. Unfortunately, all 3 opportunities to head to the ruins of Tao had been seized by terrifying existences from other eras. In the entire spiritual martial realm, not a single person had succeeded in seizing such an opportunity. After understanding all of this, Lin Sun finally came to a slight understanding. Chapter 3160. Lin Sun returned the jade slip to the black-robed woman, thought for a moment and said, I still have some doubts in my heart, and I need to ask you, I wonder if I can tell you? Seeing that Lin Sun didn't show any hostility after defeating the tall man, these people also felt a lot more relaxed. The black-robed woman said, Taoist friend, please speak, as long as we know, we will tell you everything. Lin Sun nodded and said, May I ask if you have seen the descendants of Fangtsuan Mountain these years? Fangtsuan Mountain. The black-robed woman and the others all narrowed their eyes, and their expressions changed. Before answering this question, may I ask what is your relationship with Fangtsuan? The black-robed woman asked. Lin Sun no longer concealed, and said, I am Lin Sun, the 50th descendant of Fangtsuan Mountain. Lin Sun. The black-robed woman and the others' expressions changed. The white-robed man was even more surprised. So it is that Lin Sun. You also know me? Lin Sun was surprised. Of course. The black-robed woman took a deep breath and said, "In other words, in today's spiritual martial realm, I am afraid that no one doesn't know your name." As she spoke, she explained the reason. Just more than 10 years ago, 3 eternal gods from the 9th heaven, Yi clan, Panwu clan, and Xingtian clan arrived at the Sea of Destiny, and they also brought a piece of news. All the eternal gods of the 9th heaven were flattened by Lin Sun, the successor of Feng Siyuan. Moreover, the 4 ancestral halls, Zen sect, and witchcraft sect also suffered heavy casualties, all caused by Lin Sun alone. This matter suddenly caused a stir in the spiritual martial realm, and many terrifying existences distributed in this realm learned about it. And Lin Sun's name also caused a storm, and everyone knew about it. So it was them who leaked the news. Only then did Lin Sun understand. In the past, he swept the 9th heaven, and only the Yi clan, Xingtian clan, and Panwu clan escaped. Just 10 years ago, he also sent Greenwood Taoist body to the 9th heaven again, but unfortunately, he still couldn't find the whereabouts of the 3 eternal gods. Unexpectedly, the 3 eternal gods each sent an eternal realm existence, and they had already arrived at the Sea of Destiny. Clearly, the things that had happened in Eternal True World a few years ago were bound to be known by the old men in Spirit Martial World a long time ago. Lin Sun calculated the time. When the news reached the Sea of Destiny, he was in the ruins of Fortune, remodeling the Fortune Divine City. In other words, even if those old freaks of the Spirit Martial World found out about it, it was probably impossible for them to know that he'd already attained the creation realm in the ruins of creation. While Lin Sun was thinking, the black-robed woman and others were all overwhelmed with emotions. They looked at Lin Sun with a hint of awe in their eyes. Only now did they completely understand that it wasn't a ferocious dragon they'd encountered this time, it was obviously a peerlessly ferocious and heaven-defying ferocious person. "Fellow Taoist, you still haven't answered my question." Lin Sun woke up from his meditation and looked at the black-robed woman. The black-robed woman instantly restrained her distracting thoughts and said, "According to our knowledge, the disciples of Mount Innerheart formed an alliance with the Origin sect and Spirit sect after they arrived at the Ocean of Destiny, and they've been residing on a divine mountain at the core area of the Ocean of Destiny for the past few years. But..." At this point, she looked a little hesitant. "But what?" Lin Sun asked. "I've personally experienced this matter. Let me tell you." "Tell me." The skinny old man with the huge black sword case on his back said, "In the past, the Shaman sect, Zen sect, and the 12 eternal god clans viewed Mount Innerheart with hatred. But because the Origin sect and Spirit sect protected them, no one dared to do anything to the disciples of Mount Innerheart." As he spoke, he looked at Lin Sun. "But more than 10 years ago, when the Shaman sect, Zen sect, and the Eternal God clans learned of your deeds in the eternal world, a calamity that targeted the disciples of Mount Innerheart erupted. 9 years ago, the Zen sect's Amitabha Buddha Heart Pot appeared and joined forces with the Shaman sect and the 12 Eternal God clans to head to the Divine Mountain where the Origin sect resided. A great battle erupted there. When he heard this, Lin Sun's heart clenched, and his expression changed. He took a deep breath and continued listening. That great battle lasted for 7 days. The sky was dark, and in the middle of it, the Spirit sect's forces also joined in. The entire realm of spiritual martial arts was alarmed. According to the news that spread later, in this battle, the 2 boundless realm cultivators of the Origin sect were seriously injured, and 2 creation realm cultivators died on the spot. Many important figures of the Spirit sect were also injured. On the side of Mount Innerheart, most of the disciples had not reached the eternal realm, so before the battle broke out, they were already protected. Only the eldest disciple was killed. Lin Sun's body stiffened, and his heart felt like it was being clenched tightly. Eldest senior brother was killed. How was this possible? All of a sudden, his heart was in turmoil and he could not calm down. "Fellow Taoist." The skinny old man looked at Lin Sun worriedly. Lin Sun's complexion was terrible, and his whole body was emitting an uncontrollable violent aura. "I'm fine. Go on," Lin Sun said in a low voice after a moment of silence. "Go on." He tried to calm himself down. Anger could never solve a problem. After that battle, the territory occupied by the Yuan sect was completely turned into ruins. Now the Yuan sect, along with the disciples of Fang Siyuan, are entrenched on the Divine Mountain where the Spirit sect is located. The emaciated old man said, "Supposedly, their situations aren't optimistic. As for everything else, I'm not sure either. After all, those are matters that have occurred in the core area, and creation realm figures like us are utterly unqualified to participate in them. I heard that in these years, the Spirit sect, the Yuan sect, and Mount Innerheart have been trapped on the Divine Lotus Mountain. That is the territory of the Spirit sect, but there are always experts from the Sorcerer sect, the Zen sect, and the 12 Eternal God clans stationed in all directions. They have no chance to leave the Divine Lotus Mountain." The tall man suddenly said, "Moreover, the sorcerer ancestor Lei Song of the Sorcerer sect has issued an order that if the Spirit sect and the Yuan sect do not hand over the disciple of Fang Siyuan, they will not have any chance to fight for the Great Way Lotus Mountain in the future." He paused, then continued, "The 12 Eternal God clans have also declared that one day, they will raise the Divine Lotus Mountain to the ground." Hearing this, Lin Sun's heart surged with uncontrollable anger. His eyes were frighteningly dark. How could he not know that it was precisely because he had wiped out the Yuan sect, the Zen sect, and the 12 Eternal God clans that these forces had vented their anger on the senior brothers and sisters of Mount Innerheart. In order to protect their senior brothers and sisters, the Yuan sect and the Spirit sect had also been implicated. When he thought of this, Lin Sun wanted nothing more than to kill them. This was hatred. Once it was formed, both sides would seize every opportunity to exact revenge, regardless of whether they were enemies or allies. Do you all know? Do you know the strength of the Sorcerer sect, the Zen sect, and the 12 Eternal God clans in the Lingwu Intermediate Realm? Lin Sun asked. The black-robed woman said, "On the Zen sect's side, the infinite Buddha heart pot is the leader. It is a boundless realm existence. It is said that he has already gone through 6 great desolation tribulations. His foundation is unfathomable. Apart from the infinite Buddha heart pot, the other 3 boundless realm figures of the Zen sect are Xin-Ing, Zhuoxing, and Zhuokong. Xin-Ing is an old antique who has gone through 4 great desolation tribulations. Like Xin-Ing, he is also a boundless realm existence. As for Zhuoxing and Zhuokong, they are at the lesser boundless realm. The former has gone through 2 great desolation tribulations, while the latter has gone through 1. The Zen sect has as many as 11 creation realm figures. After the black-robed woman introduced the Zen sect, she began to introduce the Sorcerer sect. In the Sorcerer sect, there were also 4 boundless realm existences. The leader was the sorcerer ancestor Lei Song. It was said that he was the junior brother of the Sorcerer sect's ancestor, Tian Wu, and possessed boundless realm cultivation. The other 3 were Wu Hongzi, Ta Nanfeng, and Xiao He. Each of them was a transcendent existence who could look up to the heavens and walk through many eras. In the Sorcerer sect, there were 9 creation realm existences. After understanding that, Lin Sun felt a chill and calmed down completely. He did not expect the Sorcerer sect and the Zen sect to have so many mighty figures. From this, it could be seen that he was indeed lucky to be able to destroy the Sorcerer sect and the Zen sect's territory back then. After all, if it was not for the appearance of the Era calamity that forced these old fellows to come to the Kunlun ruins, with his strength, it was destined that he would not be able to shake the Sorcerer sect and the Zen sect's foundation. As for the 12 Eternal God clans, each of them has at most 2 boundless realm existences, and at least 1 boundless realm figure. However, when they gather together, there are close to 20 boundless realm existences. as for those creation realm powerhouses, there are even more. The black-robed woman continued, fortunately, their relationship isn't very harmonious. When they're united against outsiders, they can enter and leave together, but at other times they're also in a competitive relationship. In short, the current spirit martial world is ruled by the Zen sect, the Origin sect, and the 12 eternal god clans. They firmly occupy the most advantageous territory in the core area. Upon hearing this, Lin Sun could not help but ask, "What about the Origin sect and the Spirit sect?" The black-robed woman said, "The Origin sect has 3 boundless realm existences. The leader is the great boundless realm existence, Xing Jiangu. The other 2 are Renfutian and Gu Yueshing. However, in that battle back then, Renfutian and Gu Yueshing were already severely injured. I don't know if they've recovered." After a pause, she continued, "Apart from that, the Origin sect originally had 9 creation realm existences. However, in the battle back then, 2 of them had already fallen. There should only be 7 left now." Following that, she explained the situation of the Spirit sect. The leader of the Spirit sect was Fu Nanli. Just like the Origin sect's Xing Jiangu, he was a great boundless realm existence. Apart from that, there were 2 other boundless realm existences. They were Xunhui Jia and Shuiyi. The Spirit sect had very few creation realm existences. There were only 6 of them. After understanding this, Lin Sun could already clearly feel the gap between them. Not to mention the 12 eternal god clans, just the top forces of the Sorcerer sect and the Zen sect were superior to the Origin sect and the Spirit sect. If there were 12 eternal god clans, the difference in strength would be like heaven and earth. There will be additional updates tonight. Chapter 3161. After learning about the situation of the 4 ancestral halls and the 12 eternal gods, Lin Sun couldn't help but worry. His eldest senior brother was in trouble. The Yuan Church, the Spirit Church, and the descendants of Mind sect were all trapped in Lotus Leaf Mountain. How could Lin Sun not worry? "Does anyone know the location of Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain?" Lin Sun asked. The black-robed woman said, "It is said to be in the southwest of the core area of this realm. If you want to go there, you must be careful. The realm of spiritual martial arts is not peaceful. Instead, it is full of danger. If you want to enter the core area from the periphery, you will be repelled and attacked by the Witchcraft Church, the Zen Church, and the 12 eternal gods." According to her, as long as you entered the core area of the realm of spiritual martial arts, you would have the chance to fight for the Great Way Life Lotus. No one would be willing to let others take away such an opportunity. Lin Sun couldn't help but sneer. If they are really capable, why didn't they succeed in obtaining the Great Way Life Lotus 3 times in the past years? The black-robed woman and the others were silent. They didn't dare to slander the Witchcraft Church, the Zen Church, and the other forces. "Thank you for answering my questions this time. However, I hope that you can keep the fact that you've met me a secret." Lin Sun cupped his hands. The black-robed woman and the others nodded seriously. "Even if fellow Taoist didn't say anything, we definitely wouldn't do something like drawing trouble onto ourselves," the black-robed woman said. "If they leaked the news, the Witchcraft Church, the Zen Church, and the other forces might not be grateful, but they would definitely offend Lin Sun and the Mind sect, the Yuan Church, and the Spirit Church." It was true that the Mind sect, the Yuan Church, and the Spirit Church were all in a dangerous situation. But if they wanted to kill them, they couldn't resist. What's more, this was the realm of spiritual martial arts. No one could leave before the calamity of the era arrived. In other words, it was impossible for anyone in the spiritual martial realm to leave. Farewell, everyone. Lin Sun didn't waste any more time and decided to leave. "My friend, there are many unscrupulous and ruthless people in the realm of spiritual martial arts. If you are found walking alone, you may cause a lot of trouble. You must be careful." The black-robed woman reminded him kindly. "Thank you." Lin Sun nodded and turned away. his tall figure soon disappeared in the gray and boundless world. Few it was also at this moment that the black-robed woman and the others heaved a sigh of relief. Previously, they were a little worried that Lin Sun would kill them to prevent the possibility of their traces being leaked. But now, it seemed that they had been overthinking things. Did you notice? More than 10 years ago, in the news that spread in this world, it was said that Lin Sun miraculously obtained an opportunity to prove his Tao in an almost impossible situation. He reached the realm of Tao in one fell swoop. It was also at that time that he went to the 9th heaven alone and swept away all the major eternal gods. The eyes of the skinny old man with a huge sword case flashed, but now only a few years have passed, and Lin Sun has already reached the middle stage of creation realm. There was an unconcealable shock in his voice. For Eternal Realm experts, it was extremely difficult for them to take a step forward on the Tao path. Even after tens of thousands of years, they might not be able to make a breakthrough. In contrast, the speed of Lin Sun's advancement was undoubtedly shocking. When he reached the realm of Tao, he could overturn the 9th heaven. Now he can even defeat Old Een, a creation realm expert, in one blow. This Lin Sun. I'm afraid he already has the foundation to be invincible under the boundless realm. Black-robed the woman also showed a solemn expression. This is also the reason why I was so afraid of him just now. Fortunately, from the beginning to the end, we did not speak ill of him, nor did we do anything excessive. Otherwise, I'm afraid we will not be able to bear the consequences today. But if Lin Sun goes to Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain like this, once he is discovered by the witch cult, Zen cult and other major forces, he will undoubtedly suffer. You know, those major forces hate him the most now. The man in white robe said softly. He and the others still did not know that Lin Sun had already destroyed the witch cult and Zen cult. Otherwise, they would definitely not be optimistic about Lin Sun's action. How can a person like him do such a stupid thing? Don't forget, his advancement speed is very fast. If he chooses to endure and wait until he reaches the boundless realm, then there will be a big show to watch. The tall man said. I really hope that someone can break the current situation. Otherwise, people like us who can only mingle in the periphery have no chance to seek opportunities in the Sea of Destiny. The woman in black robe sighed lightly. At the periphery of the spiritual martial world, there were many powerhouses like them. They could only huddle together, retreat, and lie dormant. They did not dare to go to the core area. Although they could save their lives in this way, they would lose the hope of seeking opportunities. How could they not be aggrieved? It should be known that every person who came to the Sea of Destiny was to go to the legendary ruins of Tao. Of course, the only benefit was that they didn't have to worry about being threatened by the Great Silence lifeless tribulation. Let's wait and see. There are still over 800 years before the calamity of the era arrives. There's no hurry. What if Lin Sun is really able to break the current situation? The skinny old man said slowly. Lin Sun trudged alone in the gray and boundless world, and he whistled towards the distance. The world here was ancient and primitive. The void was enshrouded in gray mist, causing the mountains, rivers, and phenomena to seem to be covered with a mysterious veil that made one's heart palpitate. Even if eldest senior brother is in trouble, I can save him as long as there's a chance of survival. I just don't know if second senior brother still remembers what I said in those years. On the way, Lin Sun was really worried about eldest senior brother's situation. In those years, he had told second senior brother Zhongqiu how he used the power of nirvana to save his disciple Tang Jiang, and he had also exhorted second senior brother to help him pay attention to the relics left by those fallen senior brothers and sisters to see if he could find some items that contained vitality. Under such circumstances, if second senior brother saw eldest senior brother in trouble, it would undoubtedly be the best thing if he could collect some of eldest senior brother's vitality. But if eldest senior brother didn't even have a chance of survival, then it would be really bad. And this was exactly what worried Lin Sun the most. Bang! Suddenly, a sharp whistle of an arrow breaking through the air sounded, and it stimulated Lin Sun to wake up from his thoughts. Almost at the same time, a jet-black arrow had arrived out of thin air, and it was imminent. It was too swift. It seemed to have torn apart the barrier of time and space, and the aura branded on the tip of the arrow was peerlessly fierce. Shockingly, it was an extremely overbearing energy of the laws, and it was related to the Slaughter Dao. If it was any other person at the same realm, that person would probably be unable to avoid it at all. But to Lin Sun, this arrow wasn't enough to threaten him. Just then, the jet-black arrow was grabbed by his right hand when it was half a foot away from the center of his brows. The energy of the laws emitted by the arrow was extremely terrifying, yet it was firmly suppressed by Lin Sun's right hand, causing the arrow to be unable to move forward in the slightest. Bang! In the next moment, the arrow was crushed into powder by the force of Lin Sun's palm. Damn it! In the extreme distance, the expression of a figure changed abruptly, and he retreated after his attack failed. This was obviously a ruthless figure that had been in battle for a long time, and he left decisively. Do you think I'm easy to bully just because I'm all alone? However, this figure had just started moving when a piercingly cold voice resounded by his ear. Before he could react, a large hand that blotted out the sky had already enveloped down. Boom! This big hand was shrouded in obscure light and shadow like rain, propping up the sky and pressing down on the mountains and rivers. When it came down, the surrounding void was crushed and squeezed into pieces. The figure in it had no way to escape or avoid, so he could only face it head-on. Break! He waved a cyan bow in his hand and tried his best to fight it head-on. At this moment, his cultivation of the creation realm also broke out completely. Crack! Under that palm, the cyan bow directly broke and burst into pieces, and its owner's body was cracked. He fell to the ground like a meteorite, bleeding from his 7 orifices. As soon as this person was about to get up, Lin Sun stepped on his back. A dense sound of bones breaking rang out, and this person suddenly collapsed like mud, with an extremely painful look on his face. I'm very angry now, but you just bumped into me. You deserve it. Lin Sun's eyes were cold, and he stuffed this opponent with the cultivation of the late stage of the creation realm into the abyssal sword cauldron, intending to find time to refine him with the 5th sequence of the ultimate ruins. Then, he glanced around. In his previous perception, there were several figures in the nearby area rushing over. However, when they saw the scene of the archer being killed, these figures immediately turned around and rushed into the distance. Obviously, they were in cahoots with the archer. Their intention was also very simple. First, the archer would attack to lure the enemy, and then they would besiege him together. But now they were obviously frightened and directly fled. Sure enough, the Eternal Realm people in this place are not easy to deal with. If I act alone, I'm most likely to be attacked like this. Lin Sun remembered the black-robed woman's warning. After thinking for a moment, the light on his body flowed, and in the blink of an eye, his appearance and temperament changed completely. He did this because he was worried that his identity would be exposed, so that the witchcraft cult, Zen cult, and other big forces would realize that he had now arrived in the spiritual martial realm. If that was the case, the consequences would be very serious. The cruel reality was that even if his current combat power was enough to make him the supreme in the eternal true world, he might not be afraid of opponents in the lesser boundless realm in the spiritual martial realm, but if he ran into someone in the greater boundless realm, he would have to fight with his life on the line. It should be known that those existences in the greater boundless realm had all gone through more than 3 great silence lifeless calamities, and survived the destruction of more than 3 epochs. They were unbelievably powerful. Lin Sun had once fought against Enchantment, the destined envoy who walked out of the Dao epoch. Enchantment was clearly a greater boundless realm existence, and although Lin Sun had suppressed him at that time, he had also been seriously injured. Moreover, Shanying's Taoist body had only been destroyed by Lin Sun at that time, and his primordial spirit was still alive. The reason why he was captured by Lin Sun in the end was because Shanying had realized that he had been abandoned by the mastermind behind the scenes, so he could not bear that kind of blow, and had completely given up resisting. If not for that, even if Lin Sun could have won that battle, he would have had to pay a more serious price. This was the terror of the greater boundless realm. In the spiritual martial world there were quite a few people like him. As a result, Lin Sun had to be vigilant and careful. The wisest thing to do was to conceal his identity and whereabouts. Otherwise, once the enemy found out, the disadvantages would definitely outweigh the advantages, and it would lead to unpredictable disasters. More updates for you. Chapter 3162. Lin Sun continued to move forward in the vast world. But compared with before, he became more cautious. He restrained his aura all the way, like a shadow of nothingness, shuttling through the void. In Lin Sun's view, it was not difficult for him to avoid the perception of people in the same realm with his current cultivation. But the reality was beyond Lin Sun's expectation. In other words, many of the old guys distributed in the realm of spiritual martial arts had mastered extremely wonderful secret methods and magical powers, which were enough to sense and see through Lin Sun's traces. Especially when they noticed that Lin Sun was walking alone, danger came. As the black-robed woman said, there was no shortage of ruthless people in the realm of spiritual martial arts, and the more powerful they were, the more ruthless they were. And Lin Sun, who walked alone, was often regarded as the target of robbery. Whether it was for wealth or to force opponents to surrender, fighting and killing were always happening in the realm of spiritual martial arts. This was why the black-robed woman chose to form an alliance, and why they hoped to let Lin Sun join their camp. When the whole world was full of eternal realm figures, they could live longer by walking together. This was called strength in numbers. In less than an hour, Lin Sun suffered another surprise attack. His opponents were 5 existences in the creation realm, 2 at the peak level and 3 at the late level. When Lin Sun noticed this, he tried to avoid their siege and leave, which was regarded as a sign of timidity and weakness. Then, a battle broke out. These 5 existences in the creation realm had obviously fought for a long time and cooperated tacitly. When the battle broke out, they first released a divine order to cover the world to prevent the movement caused by the battle from attracting more opponents. Then, led by 2 creation realm experts in the peak level, they immediately used their trump cards and rushed to Lin Sun. From beginning to end, they didn't talk nonsense. And the other 3 stayed on one side to prevent Lin Sun from escaping. They cooperated with each other seamlessly. If it was at any other time, this would undoubtedly be a perfect hunt, and it was sufficient to capture and kill a prey in an instant. Unfortunately, they met Lin Sun. The opponents tried to kill him in an instant, and he didn't want to waste more time, so he immediately used the 4 Tao forms together and used their strongest means. Sure enough, the outcome was decided in an instant. The 2 perfected creation stage beings who bore the brunt of the attack were directly suppressed on the spot. Before they could even react, they were stuffed into the abyssal sword cauldron like captured chick. The other 3 late-stage creation realm experts sensed that something was wrong. They were just about to retreat when Lin Sun's 3 great Tao clones rushed forward to stop them. With 3 muffled bangs, he was also suppressed. When one of them was being suppressed, he asked with grief and indignation, "Fellow Taoist, your battle prowess is so great. When you sensed our auras, why did you try to escape and lure us into attacking you?" Lin Sun's Greenwood Taoist physique answered patiently, "I'm in a hurry, so I don't want to fight with you. But I didn't expect you to court death. Who can you blame?" When the man heard this, he had the urge to vomit blood. Before he could speak again, he was suppressed by Lin Sun. Lin Sun would not show any mercy to such opponents. They didn't even say a word and wanted to kill him as soon as they came up. How could Lin Sun spare them? He must be served by the 5 sequences of the ultimate. Fortunately, although there were many fierce people in the realm of spiritual martial arts, most of them were very cautious. The black-robed woman and the others Lin soon met at the beginning were undoubtedly the most sensible group of people. On the following road, although Lin Sun's whereabouts were also noticed by many people, most of them chose to give up when they tried to chase him. On the one hand, Lin Sun's speed was too fast. On the other hand, they didn't dare to rush with all their strength before they found out the details of Lin Sun. Of course, there were also the 5 people who were suppressed by Lin Sun. But when they rushed out to deal with Lin Sun, they all ended up in tragedy. After 6 hours, the number of opponents suppressed by Lin Sun along the way had reached as many as 19. Among them, 15 were in the creation realm, and 4 were in the transcending rules realm. In the outside world, they were all dominators who could command the wind and rain. Even in the realm of spiritual martial arts, as long as they didn't break into the core area, they could live longer with their strength. Unfortunately, after meeting Lin Sun, their fate was doomed to come to an end. Ahead should be the area that belongs to the core area of the realm of spiritual martial arts. Lin Sun looked up. The heavens and the earth in the distance were enshrouded by the dense and surging fluctuations of the vitality of the Grand Tao. The ocean of destiny in the sky emanated strands of boundless white light, and it bathed the world in a mysterious, ancient, and divine aura. The wisps of white light were called the life power of the Great Way. They possessed incredible power and were also of great benefit to the cultivation of the boundless realm. The reason why it was said that only in the core area could one fight for the opportunity of the Great Way Life Lotus was that in the core area, one could sense and refine the life power of the Great Way. When the opportunity of the Great Way Life Lotus appeared, one could directly rush into the sea of fate by relying on the refined life power of the Great Way. On the contrary, if one didn't refine enough life power of the Great Way, once one got close to the sea of fate, one would be instantly drowned by the vast sea and die. It was worth mentioning that even in the core area, the amount of life power of the Great Way seemed to be extremely large, like a misty rain falling, but for every cultivator, it was extremely limited. The reason was that if a cultivator wanted to rush into the sea of fate without being affected, he would need to refine at least 100,000 kilograms of life power of the Great Way. This 100,000 kilograms of life power of the Great Way would condense into a life pearl, and the power it emitted was enough to resist the power of the Sea of Fate, allowing cultivators to kill their way in and fight for the life lotus of the Great Way. Lin Sun only paused for a moment, and then his figure directly flashed into the border of the core area, heading southwest. The Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain was in this direction. According to the woman in the black dress, the power of the voodoo cult, Zen cult, and other great forces had already occupied and controlled the core area. Anyone who trespassed would be regarded as an enemy and killed without mercy. In these years, there was no lack of people who trespassed, but without exception, they were all killed. So until now, the eternal figures like the woman in the black dress could only walk on the periphery of the core area. Moreover, Lin soon found out that those experts that trespassed into the core area and were killed had practically been exposed while refining the life power of the Great Way. The reason was very easy to deduce. In the heavens and the earth at the core area, the life power of the Great Way was limited, and it could be captured by numerous great figures. When they noticed that the life power of the Great Way had suddenly decreased in an area, it naturally meant that someone was in that area. This was a difficult problem indeed. If one wanted to seize the opportunity to seize the life lotus of the Great Way, then one had to refine the life power of the Great Way. But once one refined the life power of the Great Way, then one would be noticed by those great powers. This was like a dead knot. It was precisely because of this that even if the core area was extremely vast and could be snuck in at any time, practically no one was willing to enter it during these years. To Lin Sun, this was similarly a difficult problem. Fortunately, His objective for coming here this time wasn't to refine the life power of the Great Way, and it was for the sake of heading to the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain instead. So, he didn't have to worry about this for now. Swoosh! His figure flickered as he moved through space, and all along the way, he felt the strands of life power of the Great Way that descended from the Sea of Fate, and he couldn't help but be extremely moved. The power was too miraculous, and it contained traces of the mysteries related to the rules of fate. Who wouldn't be moved? This made Lin Sun think of Xia Ji. Xia Ji controlled the power of fate. If she was allowed to cultivate here, what kind of unbelievable things would happen? Lin Sun shook his head, abandoned all distracting thoughts, and continued forward. Along the way, he saw magnificent mountains and rivers that rose and fell continuously. The life power of the Great Way that was like a misty drizzle drifted in the void, and it was also like a white mist that surged in the vast world. Different from the periphery of the core area, since entering the core area, Lin Sun actually didn't encounter a single person. However, Lin Sun could often sense that the life power of the Great Way that was distributed in the world seemed to be pulled by an invisible hand and surged in different directions. Obviously, someone was absorbing and refining the life power of the Great Way. Through observing these changes, Lin Sun was able to clearly determine where someone was cultivating, and thus he was able to stay far away from them in advance. Therefore, there was no wind or waves along the way, and there were no surprises or dangers. After a full 4 hours, Lin Sun stopped. In the extremely distant world, the vast white life power of the Great Way seemed like a myriad of streams returning to the origin, and it surged towards the same place. It was a divine mountain. This mountain was completely purple in color, and it was majestic and lofty. Mountains stood in great numbers within it, and they seemed like numerous perfectly round lotus leaves that held up the heavens and the earth. Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf. A wisp of light appeared in the depths of Lin Sun's eyes. But very quickly, he noticed that something was wrong. When the vast white life power of the Great Way in the world surged towards Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf like a tide, it stopped at an area that was 30,000 meters away from Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf, and then it vanished ceaselessly. Obviously, someone was lying dormant in that area, and he'd intercepted the life power of the Great Way that was surging towards Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf from all directions. In this way, an empty area appeared in the surroundings of Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf, and only the life power of the Great Way that drifted down from the sky could be absorbed by the cultivators on Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf. Lin Sun instantly judged. Someone was blocking the outside of Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf, and he was refining the life power of the Great Way in that area. In this way, the cultivators on Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf were bound to be able to absorb a pitifully small amount of life power of the Great Way. They're really arrogant. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He didn't need to guess at all to know that those who were blocking the area near Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf must be from the Voodoo cult, Zen cult, and the 12 eternal gods, and being blocked there in such an overbearing manner, it could be imagined how distressed and aggrieved the forces of Yuan cult, Spirit cult, and Mountain Heart sect were on Divine Mountain Lotus Leaf. The second update came soon. Chapter 3163. Right now, there was a thorny problem in front of Lin Sun. If he went to Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain like this, he would be intercepted and his identity would be exposed. In this case, even if he finally arrived at Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, his appearance would inevitably lead to the invasion of witchcraft, Zen sect, and the 12 eternal god clans. After all, these forces wanted to kill him the most now. In this way, his appearance would also bring disaster to Yuan sect, Spirit sect, and Mind Mountain on Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. This was what Lin Sun didn't want to see. But if he didn't go to Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, he couldn't find out the specific situation of Yuan sect, Spirit sect, and Mind Mountain, which would only make Lin Sun more worried. What should he do? Lin Sun frowned. Even if I go to Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain now, I can't change their situation. On the contrary, if I appear, I will bring disaster to them. In the final analysis, I don't have enough combat power at present. At most, I can fight against a boundless realm existence. Once I'm besieged by those old guys, I'm doomed to die." After a long silence, Lin Sun took a deep breath and calmed down completely. "And now, there are still more than 800 years before the arrival of the Era Calamity. As long as I don't let the enemy find my trace, it's enough for me to achieve a breakthrough in cultivation. It's not impossible to prove the boundless realm." Lin Sun made a decision. It was too unwise to take action now. He decided to stay dormant for a period of time, improve his cultivation with all his strength, and wait for the right time to act. Immediately, Lin Sun took action. After a while, in a canyon far away from Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, Lin Sun's figure appeared quietly. At this distance, if there was a battle on Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, Lin Sun could sense it immediately and rush over in a few breaths. At present, Lin Sun couldn't determine when those hostile forces would attack Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain again, but he had to prevent such a thing from happening. That was why he chose to go into seclusion in this canyon. "Open!" As Lin Sun stretched out his hand, a crack suddenly appeared on the ground silently. His figure rushed into the crack and didn't stop until he was thousands of meters underground. Then he waved his sleeve, and a cave residence was opened at a speed visible to the naked eye. Lin Sun began to get busy. He arranged the formation flags one by one, turning them into layers of invisible formations that covered the cave residence. Lin Sun doesn't lack the divine materials needed to set up arrays. In the past, when he was sweeping through the ninth heaven, he had taken away countless ancient forbidden arrays. Yet now, all of these formations were being utilized by him, and he was setting them up with his attainments in Tao markings. Lin Sun was very clear that to a boundless realm figure, any restrictive power was destined to appear very powerless. However, if the power of divine order was added into the restrictive formation, it would be a completely different story. He did not lack God-level sequences either. In Lin Sun's plan, since he was going to stay dormant for a period of time, he must be well prepared and beware of any possible danger. So, he'd put in a lot of effort when he set up the formation this time, and he'd utilized all the Tao markings he possessed. 10 days later, Lin Sun completed the restriction power of the underground cave. This formation was formed by 99 ancient restrictive formations, each of which could withstand the attack of a creation realm cultivator. Apart from that, there were also 4 types of divine-level sequences intertwined within the forbidden formation. In such a situation, under such circumstances, not only could they conceal all the commotion that occurred in the abode, even if they were discovered by a boundless realm existence, they could forget about killing their way in for a while. By the time he finished setting up the formation, Lin Sun had used up almost all of his eternal divine materials. However, Lin Sun couldn't care less about this. He named this formation the restriction of God's judgment, taking the meaning of judging the gods. After doing all this, Lin Sun rushed out of the ground and appeared in the canyon. With a single thought, Yi Futian's body trembled. Whoosh! The Greenwood Taoist body flew out and left the canyon, quickly disappearing from sight. Lin Sun used the Greenwood Taoist form to scout out the situation in the core area, such as the locations of the witchcraft cult, the Zen cult, and the 12 eternal gods. Whoosh! Soon, the Blackwater Taoist body also dashed out and hid in a cave near the canyon. From now on, the Blackwater Taoist body would stay here and pay attention to the situation in the surrounding area at all times. Once there was a disaster, it would leave immediately, thereby attracting the attention of the enemy. In this way, the abode thousands of feet underground would be even less likely to be discovered. Then, Lin Sun looked into the distance, where the Lotus Leaf Sacred Mountain was located. After a moment of silence, he returned to the underground abode. "Let's begin." Lin Sun exhaled a long breath of turbid air, sat cross-legged, and began to run his qi slowly. clatter at the same time, all kinds of elixirs, rare treasures, and eternal laws emerged and were swallowed into Lin Sun's body like a tide. Over the years, he had collected countless kinds of cultivation resources, all of which were treasures that could meet the needs of the eternal realm. Even though some of them had been consumed over the years, they only accounted for less than 40% of the total amount. In addition, Lin Sun's abyssal sword cauldron also suppressed the bodies and primordial spirit of many eternal realm figures, all of which could be refined into various treasures by the 5 sequences of the ultimate. In short, Lin Sun was not short of cultivation resources at all. Boom! In the abode, the roar was like the sound of wind and thunder. Lin Sun's body was steaming, sprinkling hundreds of millions of auspicious lights, sacred and bright. The surging power of elixirs was like lava erupting, raging all over his body, and then being refined into his own cultivation one by one. For a time, all kinds of strange phenomena emerged from Lin Sun's body. Sometimes a big abyss appeared, swallowing the sky, and sometimes a furnace roared, suppressing the past, present, and future. Those scenes could be said to be unprecedented and shocking, and the movement produced was also extremely terrifying. If it was in the outside world, it would have caused the resonance of heaven and earth, and all the phenomena. But in this abode, under the protection of the restriction of God of Judgment, all these movements were not leaked at all. After a full 3 months, with a roar like the beginning of chaos, Lin Sun, who was sitting cross-legged, suddenly produced an amazing transformation, and his qi suddenly soared a lot. On this day, Lin Sun stepped into the late stage of creation. But Lin Sun did not stop cultivating. For him, the current piece was extremely rare and precious, and he must seize all the time to improve his strength. Time flew by. Half a year after Lin Sun's closed-door cultivation, Greenwood Taoist body returned. With the integration of their minds, Lin Sun immediately learned the situation of Greenwood Taoist body in the core area in the past 6 months. He also knew the location of the witchcraft, Zen sect, and the 12 eternal gods. Even the whole mountain river territory in the core area was visited by Greenwood Taoist body. All these information would be of great help to Lin Sun in his future actions. In the past 6 months, Blackwater Taoist body, who was dormant near the canyon, had not moved. This was naturally a good thing. At least it proved that there was no disaster in the Lotus Leaf Mountain in the past 6 months. In fact, for the whole spiritual martial world, the time before the appearance of the Great Way Life Lotus had been relatively peaceful. Even if there were killings and battles, they mostly happened in the periphery. In this core area, except for the place where the Lotus Leaf Mountain was located, the other territories had long been occupied and controlled by the witchcraft, Zen sect, and other great forces. Unless those great forces attacked the Lotus Leaf Mountain on a large scale again, it was almost impossible to see any fighting or killing in this situation. Of course, the most important thing was that no one knew that Lin Sun had arrived in the spiritual martial world. Otherwise, this peaceful situation would have been broken long ago. Until 19 years later. Boom! On this day, the Sea of Fate, which had been flowing across the sky, suddenly shook violently. The white sea water set off stormy waves, roaring like thunder and shaking all directions. At this moment, all the regions of the spiritual martial world were alarmed. The fourth opportunity is finally coming. In the periphery, many people looked at the Sea of Fate in the sky with excitement, sadness, and helplessness. In the past, the Sea of Fate had had 3 similar changes. Each time, a Great Way Life Lotus would be born, and each time, it would lead to crazy competition among the powerful figures of each era. Unfortunately, the Eternal Realm figures who hadn't refined a Great Way Life Pearl didn't have a chance to fight for it at all. This time, we must work together. Otherwise, we'll be defeated by the old fogies of the other eras, just like the last 3 times. On a divine mountain in the core region, the witchcraft cult, the Zen cult, and the 12 eternal gods had already gathered together. the eyes of Grand Sorcerer Lei Song, the infinite Buddha Heart Kettle, and the other great boundless realm existences all lit up with blazing light. The one who had spoken earlier was Grand Sorcerer Lei Song. He wore a beast robe, was tall, and held a black bone staff in his hand. The wrinkles on his face were like ravines, making him look incomparably old. But his aura was so powerful that the nearby eternal existences felt their hearts tremble. According to our previous agreement, if we get the Great Way Life Lotus this time, we'll first send 3 lesser boundless realm existences from our respective camps away. The infinite Buddha Heart Kettle said in a low voice. He wore a monk's robe, but he looked like a delicate youth. Only his eyes shone with the aura of age. Agreed. The other important figures of the eternal gods all nodded. A Great Way Life Lotus could only take 3 people to the ruins of myriad ways. This meant that the great factions had to divide up the spots before fighting for this opportunity. The Yuan Church and the Spirit Church are no longer a concern. They won't dare to rashly take the Great Way Life Lotus in their current situation. In other words, our opponents are still those old fogies from the other eras. Everyone, remember, if there's any fatal danger, you must retreat immediately. Don't force yourself. He paused, then swept his gaze across the crowd. Of course, we can't ignore our opponents from the Yuan Church and the Spirit Church. We must prevent them from ambushing us while we're fighting. Everyone's eyes narrowed when they heard this. I'll add more tonight. Chapter 3164. Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. The disciples of the Yuan Church, Spirit Church, and Fangtsuan Mountain sensed the disturbance in the Sea of Destiny and immediately gathered. What a pity! Xinjiang Gorge heaved a long sigh. He wore black clothes and carried an ancient sword on his back. His figure was tall, elegant, and otherworldly. He possessed the cultivation of the great boundless realm, and he was also an extremely senior in the Origin sect. He had come to this nameless forbidden area a long time ago. Everyone nearby fell silent when they heard him sigh. They all knew what Travel Sword Gorge was feeling sorry for. If this continues, we won't have any more chances to fight for the Great Tao Lotus until the end of the era. Fu Nanli frowned. Most importantly, the Shaman sect and Zen sect are bound to launch a large-scale attack before the calamity of the era descends. In my opinion, instead of passively enduring the enemy's attacks like this, it's better to seize this opportunity to kill our way out. He was dressed in a yellow robe and had a long beard. His aura was no weaker than that of the Travel Sword Gorge, and he was also the leader of the Spirit Church. Everyone couldn't help but become slightly restless when they heard this. In these past few years, they'd always been trapped on Lotus Leaf Mountain. Not only were they unable to obtain sufficient vitality of the Grand Tao, they were even constantly being targeted by the enemies that were stationed in the distance, so they had no choice but to be on guard day and night. But now, the Ocean of Destiny was giving birth to the 4th opportunity, and they could only watch helplessly. They didn't even have the chance to fight for it. Such a situation had long since caused them to feel extremely aggrieved. But now, if he went all out, he would be able to catch his enemies off guard. After all, once the Tao Lotus appeared, the Shaman cult, the Zen cult, and the 12 Eternal Divines would all mobilize their strongest forces to attack the Sea of Destiny. In this way, the strength of these hostile forces in the spirit martial realm was destined to be incomparably weak. No. Xinjiang Gorge shook his head. How could Xian Kettle and Lei Song not think of what we can think of? If my guess is correct, they must have taken precautions. He paused for a moment and continued. On the other hand, once we leave this divine mountain, it'll be extremely easy for us to suffer a lethal blow. Presently, Divine Lotus Mountain was covered in all sorts of divine rank order, and it was covered in supreme restriction formations from both inside and out. It was precisely these defensive forces that allowed them to not have to worry about being attacked by their enemies even though they'd been trapped here all these years. However, things would be different once they left the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. Don't tell me we're just going to watch this happen? Fu Namli's face was gloomy, and he didn't feel good in his heart. That's not necessarily true. Suddenly, on Mount Innerheart's side, Ruosu said softly, the first 3 times the Grand Tao Fate Lotuses appeared, the enemy forces suffered defeat after defeat. They didn't succeed even once, and they even lost many of their forces. Now, if they want to seize the Grand Tao Life Lotus that has appeared for the 4th time, then they'll definitely have to pay the price. Everyone's eyes flickered. They knew that Ruosu was right. But when they thought about how their enemies were going to fight for the opportunity to head to the ruins of Tao while they could only watch helplessly, they felt extremely uncomfortable in their hearts. Moreover, pinning all their hopes on the price that the enemy had to pay when seizing the opportunity would undoubtedly make them seem incompetent. Ruosu is right. There are still 800 years until the end of the era. In the years to come, more and more Tao Lotuses are destined to appear. Those hostile forces. Regardless of whether we succeed or not, it's all good and no harm to us. Xing Jian Gorge said softly. If they succeed, 3 important figures will leave the spirit martial realm and head to the myriad profound Tao ruins. If they fail, they'll also pay the price. If this continues, their strength will continue to decrease. As long as we wait, we'll have a chance to counterattack sooner or later. Fu Namli shook his head. But I'm worried that we won't be able to wait until then. Those hostile forces will already be attacking with all their might. His words caused everyone's hearts to sink. Indeed, the Shaman sect and the Diana sect had threatened that unless they handed over Fang Xiuan's heir, they would attack sooner or later. The 12 eternal gods had even made it clear that they wouldn't let the matter rest. Perhaps, when these hostile forces were free, they would launch an all-out attack like last time. Amidst the heavy atmosphere, Zhong Qiu said decisively, Seniors, if the situation really becomes that serious, I, the heir of Fang Xiuan, will naturally not be a burden to you. That's right. Ruosu, Li Xianwei, Pu Zhen, Shuiya, and the other heirs of Fang Xiuan nodded in unison. Haha, if you're killed by those enemies, then I, Xing Jian Gorge, will live. How will I face your masters in the future? Xing Jian Gorge laughed. There's no need to worry, everyone. This is the Sea of Destiny. If we really go all out and fight, those enemies will definitely pay a heavy price. They've realized this before, which is why they haven't dared to attack us on a large scale in the past few years. After all, while they hate Mount Xiuan, fighting for the opportunity to go to the ruins of myriad wonders of Tao is more important to them. That's right. A long time ago, the master of Fang Xiuan fought against all the heroes in the Sea of Destiny and fought for the opportunity to go to the ruins of myriad wonders of Tao for the patriarchs of the Spirit Church and the Origin Church. Based on this great favor alone, the Spirit Church will definitely not stand by and do nothing. Fu Namli spoke in a warm voice. This was an extremely long time ago. Although the master of Fang Xiuan had helped the patriarchs of the Spirit Church and the Origin Church greatly, he'd also completely offended the patriarchs of the Shaman sect and the Diana sect during the battle. It was precisely because of this that the Shaman sect and the Diana sect were so hostile towards Mount Xiuan. The hearts of Zhong Qiu, Ruosu, and the others surged without end, and they felt both grateful and ashamed. They were grateful because under such circumstances, the forces of the Origin Church and Spirit Church hadn't thought of abandoning them who were disciples of the Master of Fang Xiuan. They were ashamed because it was precisely because of their existence that the Origin Church and Spirit Church had been implicated, and it was to the extent that they didn't have the chance to fight for the Grand Tao Fate Lotus until now. Rumble. As they spoke, the Sea of Destiny in the sky above them became even more turbulent and violent. The boundless white energy of destiny caused tempestuous waves and rumbled like thunderclap. At an area far away from Lotus Leaf Mountain, a man's laughter suddenly resounded. Fellow Taoists, the Grand Tao Fate Lotus is about to be born. If all of you aren't afraid of death, then feel free to fight for it. But if all of you intend to seize this opportunity to cause trouble, then you have to consider the consequences. As soon as this voice resounded, a mighty and dazzling figure soared into the sky. This person wore a golden robe, had a sharp chin, a long beard, and eyes that were like a pair of scorching suns that were brilliant and spirited. The Origin Bell. He was a minor boundless realm existence from the eternal God clan that had overcome 2 deathless tribulations. He was one of the 4 minor boundless realm existences that were stationed nearby Lotus Leaf Mountain. The other 3 were respectively, the Yang clan's Yang Heng, the Taihao clan's Taihao Ju, and the Tsang clan's Tsang Yoji. Even though these 4 minor boundless realm existences were far from being able to threaten the great figures of the Origin Church and Spirit Church, they were stationed here for a type of surveillance. Or perhaps it could be said that they were 4 scouts. Once something unusual occurred on Lotus Leaf Mountain, they would notify the Shaman sect, Zen sect, and the Eternal God clan at the first possible moment. At this moment, along with the Origin Bell's activation, it caused the expressions of everyone on Lotus Leaf Mountain to become much gloomier. When he saw there was no movement coming from Lotus Leaf Mountain, the Origin Bell emanated unbridled laughter. Ha 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 ha. I've said it before. If you don't hand over those bastards, then your Origin Church and Spirit Church are bound to be unable to obtain the Grand Tao Fate Lotus. As soon as he finished speaking, he returned to the surface and converged with Yang Heng, Tai Hao Ju, and Tsang Yoji. It seemed like they would stay here even if the Grand Tao Fate Lotus appeared. Fu Nanli couldn't help but sigh when he saw this scene. He realized that it was impossible to seize this opportunity to kill their way out. They'd obviously taken precautions against it. Bang! Suddenly, a world-shaking explosion resounded in the roiling ocean of destiny, and then an expanse of dazzling and resplendent divine light charged out and illuminated the world. At this moment, it wasn't just the spirit martial world. All the living beings in the other worlds looked over in unison. An enormous lotus that covered an area of over 100 kilometers had appeared in the ocean of destiny. It had a total of 9 petals, and every single petal was the size of a mountain. They emanated a gorgeous and resplendent glow. Before this extremely miraculous lotus, it made others feel as if the sun, moon, and stars were extremely tiny. The grand Tao of the world seemed to submit before this lotus, and it seemed so supreme and unreachable. When this lotus appeared, the roiling and extremely violent ocean of destiny instantly calmed down and became calm, and it created a strong contrast. This caused the enormous, gorgeous, and boundlessly brilliant lotus to seem even more mysterious and extraordinary. This was the Grand Tao Fate Lotus. It contained the critical factor to arrive at the ruins of Tao, and it was a supreme fortune that all the eternal realm figures of every single era dreamt of. What a shocking aura! Nearby the gorge, Lin Sun's Blackwater Taoist body couldn't help but reveal a surprised expression, and he was shocked by the grand scene revealed by the Grand Tao Fate Lotus. Presently, he knew that the Grand Tao Fate Lotus was extremely miraculous, and it formed a world of its own within it. Once it appeared, one had to charge into it within the time of 10 breaths. Otherwise, one wouldn't have the chance to enter the world within the Grand Tao Fate Lotus. This was merely the first step. After this, the experts that charged into the world of the Grand Tao Fate Lotus still had to undergo a brutal battle. No matter if they perished within it or escaped, when only 3 remained would the Grand Tao Fate Lotus bring these 3 people out of the ocean of destiny and head to the ruins of Tao of Legend. In other words, the Grand Tao Fate Lotus was like a ship, and one had to board it within the time of 10 breaths in order to possess the qualifications to compete for the 3 qualifications to head to the ruins of Tao. Sure enough, right when Lin Sun's Blackwater Taoist body was shocked, numerous figures with terrifying auras had appeared within the ocean of destiny. They were like numerous rays of divine light that glowed brilliantly, and they fought to be the first to flash towards the enormous Grand Tao Fate Lotus. For a time, Divine rays of light were like the rain that flashed through the sky, and it was a rather magnificent sight. More updates for you. Chapter 3165. In the vision of Lin Sun's dark water physique, about 300 figures had rushed into the Tao Life Lotus in just 10 breaths. This was a shocking number. It should be known that the weakest of those who dared to compete were at least in the creation realm, and there was no lack of existences in the boundless realm. In just 10 breaths, nearly 300 people had rushed into the Tao Life Lotus. How could this not be shocking? This also made Lin Sun realize that there were many terrifying existences in the other epochs outside the spiritual martial realm. When the 10 breaths of time was up, the huge and resplendent Tao Life Lotus started to close, and the 9 petals that were like mountains covered it. Some figures that had rushed into the Sea of Fate but didn't have time to rush into the Tao Life Lotus let out a long sigh and turned around to leave. Next, an extremely cruel and intense battle would take place in the world of the Tao Life Lotus, and they would either die or escape. In the end, only 3 cultivators would win and go to the ruins of wonderful Tao with this Tao Life Lotus. Lin Sun's dark water physique withdrew his gaze and turned to look in the direction of the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. Earlier, he had heard a complacent and disdainful voice. "I've already said that if you don't hand over those evil remnants, your Yuan Church and Spirit Church are destined to lose the chance to obtain the Tao Life Lotus." This voice belonged to Yuan Zhongqi, a lesser boundless realm existence. Although it was very unfamiliar to Lin Sun, the meaning in the words was extremely arrogant. At this time, the top existences of the Witchcraft Church, Zen Church, and the Eternal Gods have probably already participated in the battle for the world of the Tao Life Lotus. Lin Sun's dark water physique pondered. Now is undoubtedly the time when those hostile forces are at their weakest. If I take this opportunity to kill my way over. Just as he thought of this, there was a sudden change. In the distant horizon, figures with terrifying auras appeared one after another. There were more than 10 of them, and every one of them was so powerful that it made one's heart tremble. Lin Sun's dark water physique immediately rushed into the ground and disappeared. Boom! These experts didn't conceal their auras at all along the way, and they moved majestically in the void, causing heaven and earth to change color. When they arrived nearby Lotus Leaf Mountain, this group of figures stopped successively, and they converged with Yuan Zhongqi, Yang Heng, Tai Haoju, and Song Yoji, who were already on guard at that area. This scene was also noticed by Travel Sword Gorge, Fu Nanli and the others on Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, and their hearts sank. Among the dozen over people who came, there were shockingly 4 greater boundless realm existences. They were Amitabha of the Zen sect, Wu Hongzi of the Witchcraft sect, Wenzai of the Wen clan of the Eternal Gods, and Xing Tianyuan of the Xingtian clan. Apart from these 4, the 9 people who came together with them were also minor boundless realm existences. Such a formation didn't enter the great Tao Life Lotus to fight, but instead suddenly arrived before the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain at this moment. Their intentions were clear. It was for the sake of deterring the members of the Yuan sect and Spirit sect so that they wouldn't dare to seize this opportunity to attack. These old things are truly ruthless. Fu Nanli's face darkened. The expressions of the others didn't look any better. Their hearts were filled with rage and depression. Being bullied to such an extent yet being unable to kill their way out, it was easy to imagine how uncomfortable that feeling was. In the canyon, in the cave residence thousands of feet underground, the appearance of the black water Taoist body awakened Lin Sun from meditation. Their minds blended, allowing Lin Sun to instantly understand what was happening in the outside world. Only then did he know that the Sea of Fate had produced the 4th movement today, and the great Tao Life Lotus had also appeared. And at this time, a group of terrifying existences went to the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. This made Lin Sun's heart tighten. But after calming down and thinking about it, his state of mind calmed down. In such a situation, those hostile forces didn't dare to attack the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain with all their strength. They did this to deter the strong on the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain from taking the opportunity to attack. However, understanding was one thing, all this made Lin Sun angry. On the one hand, they snatched the opportunity in the Great Tao Life Lotus, and on the other hand, they besieged the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. It could be imagined how arrogant those hostile forces were. And from this, it could also be seen that those people on the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain had no chance to snatch the opportunity in the Great Tao Life Lotus. Do they really think that by doing this, their territory won't be attacked? Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and he stood up from the ground. At the moment, the top forces of those hostile forces had entered the Great Tao Life Lotus, and the powerful forces they left behind had also moved to the area near the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain. This also meant that the forces left in their lair were destined to be extremely weak. Perhaps, in the eyes of those hostile forces, as long as they kept an eye on the Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain in this core area, it would be enough to prevent any hidden dangers from happening. But they only didn't think of one thing. The forces of Yuan Church, Spirit Church, and Mind Mountain might not be able to take the opportunity to attack, but Lin Sun could. And as long as he ensured that his identity wouldn't be seen through by the enemy when he took action, even if those hostile forces reacted, they were destined to be unable to know that all this was done by him. After 19 years of closed-door cultivation, it's time to go out and have a walk. Lin Sun's figure flashed, and he had already swept out of the underground cave residence. For 19 years, he had sat here and cultivated, refining countless treasures of heaven and earth, and now his cultivation had already reached the level of the creation realm. Moreover, his cultivation and strength had been tempered to the extreme and unprecedented level of this realm, and the power he grasped had long since become different from the past. For example, the great Tao law he grasped, which integrated the profundities of the 5 sequences of the ultimate, the creation realm, the time realm, and other supreme taboo Taos into the Nirvana law, causing the Nirvana law to undergo an incredible transformation and become completely different from before. For example, his Taoist body, cultivation, spirit, qi, and other forces had also been tempered to the extreme by refining various eternal treasures, and had undergone many transformations in these 19 years. Even many eternal Taoist soldiers collected in these years were smelted into the Abyssal Sword Cauldron by Lin Sun, causing the power of the Abyssal Sword Cauldron to be improved again and again. And what Lin Sun paid was nearly 90% of his wealth. In other words, in these 19 years, only about 10% of the cultivation resources he possessed was left. Of course, even 10% was an astronomical figure for other people in the same realm. In short, these 19 years of painstaking cultivation and accumulation had made Lin Sun's current combat power much stronger than that of that year. At this time, if he were to face a boundless realm existence like Ying Shanying again, he also had the confidence to kill him without being injured. Whoosh! After rushing out of the underground cave residence, Lin Sun restrained his aura and quietly rushed to the distance. Still halfway, Black Water Taoist body rushed out and rushed to the periphery of the spiritual martial realm. At present, in the spiritual martial realm, only the woman in the black dress and others knew that Lin Sun had arrived in this world, although the other side would certainly not take the initiative to disclose these things. But Lin Sun was still a little worried. This trip to the camp of the hostile forces, whether successful or not, would inevitably arouse the anger of the hostile forces. It could be imagined that even if they did not know who did it, they would send all their forces to investigate. And with the wisdom of these enemies, after confirming that it was not done by the people of Lotus Leaf Divine Mountain, they would definitely suspect others. At that time, those Eternal Realm people distributed in the periphery were bound to be interrogated by those hostile forces. Under such circumstances, the woman in the black dress and others would definitely be interrogated. But at that time, Lin Sun could not be sure whether they would leak the news that he had arrived in the spiritual martial realm. Therefore, before this action, Lin soon decided to send Blackwater Taoist Body to take the woman in the black dress and others away. Even if they had to suffer for a period of time, he would compensate them later when he had the chance. Soon, Blackwater Taoist Body disappeared in the sky, and Lin Sun's original body directly rushed in another direction. The world was vast, the sea of fate under the sky was calm, and the petals of the Tao life lotus had already closed together, exuding a mysterious luster. No one knew how fierce and bloody the battle in the world of the Tao life lotus was. In the core region of the Lingwu realm, it was still as quiet as before. Many territories were empty and uninhabited. Even at this moment, those Eternal Realm people distributed in the periphery did not dare to come to the core area to collect the Tao life force. One could well imagine how arrogant those hostile forces had been in the past few years. Up ahead is the territory of the Eternal God Yi clan. 4 hours later, Lin Sun stopped in his tracks and looked into the distance. As early as 19 years ago, when he was in seclusion, Lin Sun had sent Taoist Body Qingmu to explore the Mountain River territory in the core area of the spiritual martial realm. Naturally, he knew where the hostile forces were. Those hostile forces all occupied the area closest to the Sea of Fate in the core area. Among them, the Shaman sect and the Zen sect occupied the Great Barbarian Mountain and Zen-Seeking Mountain, which were the closest to the Sea of Fate. As for the 12 Eternal God clans' territories, they were scattered in different areas like scattered chess pieces, but they were also extremely close to the Sea of Fate. Moreover, the distance between their territories was very close. With the speed of a boundless realm person, it was enough to reach another Eternal God clan's territory in 15 minutes. For example, a divine mountain that had appeared in the distant sky was the territory of the Eternal God Yi clan, called the Purple Lightning Divine Mountain. The reason why Lin Sun chose the Yi clan as his target was also after careful consideration. The Shaman sect and the Zen sect were too close to the Sea of Fate, and they were surrounded by the 12 Eternal God clans' territories. If he attacked them, it would be like attacking the enemy's core area. He would definitely be surrounded, and it was destined to cause unpredictable risk. On the other hand, the Yi clan's Purple Lightning Divine Mountain was on the periphery of this area. In this case, even if something unexpected happened, it would be enough for Lin Sun to escape easily.